You're listening to the Zetetic. You're listening to the Zetetic newscast on the Zetetic News Network with your hosts, Dave, and Xavier Diamant. Proceed by inquiry.
All right, welcome to episode 19 of the Zetetic Newscast. We're your hosts, Dave, and Xavier Diamant. It is February 25th, 2021, and we are. I'm getting a bit of an echo. Are you?
James Iredell.
I heard a little.
Last time back in was it
Oh,
October,
I think I've got a
stream.
stream.
It's a stream's going on.
November election, and so we're very glad to have him here. And of course,
Oh, testing.
That was episode 17, right?
Yeah, that's what it was.
Yeah.
Daggone it. That's okay.
Great episode.
Yeah, it was.
Episode,
That was.
yeah.
I think we talked about virus in Thesaurus Thursday. There, I don't have a word for Thesaurus Thursday today.
I have a good one.
You got one?
Yeah. Let's look up the word miscreant.
Okay. One who behaves badly, often by breaking rules or of conduct or the law. One who does not believe in a certain religion. An infidel or heretic. Misbelieving, unbelieving, infidel. So what's the thought behind miscreant? Why should we talk about that on the 25th here?
Well, because science, or what we call science today, is the new religion.
That's sure.
So anyone who disagrees with the official consensus is a miscreant to the scientific establishment. That's what the whole term, like, science denier, is all meant to indicate, is that, oh, that person's a miscreant. You know, he doesn't uphold the orthodoxy of what we want everyone to believe when it comes to material reality. And
well, that raises a good point. Last week we had another one, an interview as opposed to a full, sort of normal episode with Mr. Nathan Oakley of the Flat Earth Debate, and we got a lot of passionate response from the airing of that, and it's interesting because science is basically all he talks about. And but yet it seems so subjective now, science, this whole thing of science. It's when the science works for me, when it's convenient for me, it's just so interesting how science gets disregarded when it's inconvenient, like the American frontline doctors who are coming forward and talking about the mask policy and talking about the vaccination policy and assessing risk in the whole health equation, and they get censored, because they don't follow the science. Well, it's your science, it's YouTube's science, it's the CDC's science. But it's interesting because even the CDC contradicts itself
all the time
in cases. So who is the arbiter of science? But yeah, miscreant, that it definitely feels like that now. If you go in a grocery store, right, without a mask, or you're the miscreant.
That's right. It's like you're the pauper outside the church trying to collect alms because the church says that it's all for the poor and everything, but all the parishioners going in and out just sneer at you and spit on you and all that kind of stuff. So it's similar now, but now everywhere is the church of science.
Well, that's an interesting point too, because at the same time, churches are not allowed to operate as they have been.
That's right.
The right to assemble is sort of an inherent virtue in our country, enshrined in our founding documents and such. But it would be one thing if the church voluntarily decided that they, don't want to get together on, such and such day for such and such reason. But that's not what we have, is it?
No, it's
Is the government literally? I thought we had separation of church and state.
Oh, no.
Because we got to follow the science. It's incredible.
Yeah. Yep.
Well, that underscores my conclusion over, I've not come to this conclusion easily or quickly. It took a lot of time to sort of come to this realization, but most people who even claim to be atheists are in fact not. No. They are religious zealots who believe in the God of the state.
That's right.
And
of the official declarations of scientific authorities that reinforce their pre-existing proclivities to not uphold something that they deem, in contest with their desires.
Yeah.
Because that's really what it is at the end of the day.
Well, we got a 2 T-Fuel donation on Theta Edgecast from a guy who said we do ourselves a disservice by having folks like Nathan Oakley on the show and talking about such ludicrous ideas as flat Earth.
Meanwhile, he hasn't looked into it at all.
But he donated to us because he likes a good laugh. And, others said much nastier things. They said we're fucking idiots. But I didn't see a single refutation of anything that Nathan said. I saw one guy say, the Earth is a sphere, period. And I'm like, oh, so you're the scientific one. Interesting how that works.
Yeah, well, because you're pandering to social perception and the fallacy of social proof. If enough people believe it, it must be true. That's an ad populum fallacy. And really, it's good to be a contrarian when there's such high percentage bias amongst the population about anything. Saying that 95% of people believe the Earth's a terraqueous orb testicle suspended in a giant nothing vacuum, whizzing about in 6 different directions, with no evidence really, except a bunch of tertiary, inferential, indirect references to what other people have said or done or show them, and that's it. That's really it.
Well, speaking of, we had a major event, one that is so new and fresh and worth celebrating, landing on Mars, right?
Yeah. How many times have we supposedly
Last
done
week,
that?
NASA, the biggest black budget black hole in existence.
You want to play a bit from Eric Dubé's? This is Eric Dubé's recent video about the Mars Perseverance rover landing debunked. And it's fitting that we're airing on Theta Edgecast, right? Because they have a partnership with NASA, and you can go on theta.tv and watch NASA 24/7, and it's just 24/7 propaganda for space, which, as Nathan Oakley pointed out, violates our own observable laws of physics that are here. But yeah, Eric does great work. We have a section on the site Space News, and if you go in there, we aggregate Eric Dubé's stuff, among other similar type content creators who are making the same sort of observations. But let's listen into Eric here.
Last week, NASA, the biggest black budget black hole in existence, sucking in $52 million of American taxpayer money every single day, just spent $2.3 billion of your dollars to allegedly land a remote-control car on Mars for the 5th time. Yes, the multi-billion-dollar charade of landing on Mars has been happening since 1976, and thanks to the gullible, unquestioning masses enthralled and duped by these ridiculous Hollywood performances, they will most likely continue for decades to come. To begin with, The tiny reddish circular light in the sky known as Mars is not a spherical terra firma world millions of miles away capable of landing a rover on. All of the so-called planets were known to the ancients as wandering stars, because they differ from the fixed stars in their relative motions only. To them, stars were not spherical worlds millions of miles away, or suns trillions of miles away, as we are brainwashed to believe they are today. Stars were and are simply luminaries, immaterial lights in the sky, several thousand, not millions, of miles away, that revolve over and around the Earth. The Masonic magicians at NASA and the other world space agencies, using lying actor-nauts and Hollywood tricks like green screens, wires, harnesses, and endless amounts of CGI images, through pseudoscience books and programs, mass media and public education, universities and government propaganda, have systematically indoctrinated the entire world into believing what is nothing but an elaborate piece of science fiction. As you can clearly see for yourself with a bit of research, a telescope or high-zoom camera, and an open, discerning mind actually honestly admitting to yourself what is and what isn't a CGI, computer-generated image, it is obvious that the light in the sky known as Mars is not some science fiction desert planet millions of miles away. The CGI images NASA shows of a spherical world are clearly and admittedly not photographs, and look nothing like Mars when seen through a telescope. Meanwhile, the actual photographs NASA claims are coming from this completely other world look exactly like they are coming from Devon Island, Canada, with a red tint added in post-processing. There is nothing being shown in NASA's photographs of Mars that cannot easily be faked on Earth. And given the lack of skepticism or scrutiny from the gullible masses, they barely have to fake any evidence too. Just give them a computer screen of a CGI parachute with a CGI rover landing on a CGI Mars, and film a bunch of compartmentalized NASA 20-something employees straight out of space camp getting giddy and high-fiving each other. And that is literally all it takes. The unquestioning masses now thoroughly believe NASA has landed their fifth remote control car tens of millions of miles away and are receiving photographs from it through the internet. Yes, that's right. How do you think NASA sends and receives all data to and from this remote control car? They apparently have internet technology so strong and fast that they can operate a remote control vehicle from tens of millions of miles away. Do we, the public, have any independent evidence whatsoever that such technology actually exists? Of course not, and it isn't necessary. Again, because the science fiction indoctrinated masses are so bedazzled by their pseudoscientific priests at NASA that they don't require things like proof or evidence. When they are pressed on such matters, like the original moon landing tapes, LEM blueprints, telemetry data, and other physical proof, NASA says they filmed over the original moon landing tapes and conveniently lost all the physical evidence. As NASA actor-naut Don Pettit stated, "I would go back to the moon in a nanosecond, but we destroyed that technology, and it's a painful process to build it back again." So that is their excuse for why we haven't been back to the moon in 50 years, because they destroyed the technology, and it's a painful process to build it back again. But apparently they have had the tech since 1976, just a few years after the Apollo missions, to send Viking to Mars, which is allegedly over 100 times further away than the moon. Now let's talk about the supposed parachutes deployed by these rovers when landing. NASA says the surface pressure on Mars is only 0.3% of the surface pressure on Earth, and equivalent to the pressure at about 23 miles above Earth. This fact alone blows their hoax out of the water. Any skydiver knows there is not nearly enough air matter at that pressure to provide any kind of lift for opening and billowing out the parachutes NASA uses to land its Mars probes. No parachute ever devised has been able to successfully deploy at that altitude. They simply stream straight back, then never fill the rest of the way down. Joe Kittinger's record highest, fastest, and longest parachute dive from the Earth's upper atmosphere had him free-falling from only 19 miles high for 15 minutes at 767 miles per hour, and his drogue chute proved useless and offered no deceleration. Yet NASA would have us believe, for example, that their 2008 Phoenix's drone parachute managed to somehow slow it down from 12,738 miles per hour to 123 miles per hour in just 2.86 minutes before its final landing. In other words, NASA is claiming to do something on Mars that we have no evidence is even possible on Earth at significantly lower altitude and 16 times slower speed. NASA must have since gotten the memo because this time, for Perseverance, they claim instead that they fitted it with a special aeroshell and heat shield, which allows the, quote, drag of the Martian atmosphere to do all the heavy lifting for them, somehow slowing the craft from over 12,500 miles per hour to just 1,000 miles per hour before deploying the parachute. But again, even delving into these facts and figures is superfluous, because NASA simply shows us CGI pictures of a car on a parachute, and nobody questions it anyway. NASA.gov says that, quote, the Perseverance spacecraft departs Earth at a speed of about 24,600 miles per hour, about 39,600 kilometers per hour. The trip to Mars will take about 7 months and about 300 million miles, 480 million kilometers. The actual fastest vehicle that exists is the SR-71 Blackbird fighter jet, which can travel an incredible Mach 3.3, or 2,100 miles per hour. With no evidence whatsoever, NASA claims this ridiculous-looking CGI cupcake on a hot plate can achieve speeds 12 times faster than the fastest actual flying vehicle in the world. The endless red flags were no different with the Mars Phoenix rover landing in 2008. On June 3, 2008, MX News featured a picture given to them by NASA of the Phoenix's first dig into Martian soil, but on June 6, 2008, 3 days later, the London Daily Telegraph reported from NASA that, quote, another communications glitch stopped NASA's Phoenix lander again from making its first dig into the Martian soil. Unable to keep their stories straight, NASA gave out news blurbs before their time. Then, when Mars Phoenix lander's robotic arm photographed image 89666759, taken at 143937 LST, and image 89662868 at 144123 LST, only 2 minutes and 46 seconds later. In the first image, there is a fallen loose screw visible by the leg which disappears before the second photo is taken. NASA themselves claim the robot arm did not touch Martian soil until the next day, so they cannot claim to have moved it themselves, and the topical arrangement of sand and rocks remains exactly the same, so it cannot be explained by strong winds. So who picked up the screw? More than likely, an observant and well-meaning stagehand picked it up between shots. Back during the Mars Spirit rover, NASA messed up then as well, changing the Columbia commemorative plaque from the one featured just seconds before launch to a totally different one when supposedly on Mars. These are all smoking gun pieces of evidence that NASA is faking these supposed Mars landings. But again, without a critically thinking and informed populace, we will continue to be duped over and over by these media charades.
Yeah, it always blew my mind when I heard this purported speed of the rocket ship, 3 times the faster than the speed of a rifle bullet, and human beings are supposed to survive that, and they show them, spinning in these these centrifugal, gravitron machines and stuff. It's insane.
Well, and they actually conducted experiments back in the early 60s about human thresholds in vacuums. They had a full suit assembly and everything, and people went unconscious within seconds.
Right.
With not even nearly as high of the threshold as they purport is in space.
Yeah.
But, the magical Mason cowboys, they can, wrangle space like a cow and ride it, indefinitely.
Yeah. We've brought this Instagram up before, but we'll depart from the space topic and move on to some stuff in the Telegram, but Don Pettit in space did this hilarious video with Don Pettit. If you guys don't know,
Hilarious.
he's an Eric Dubay called him an actornaut, but he's supposed to be one of our best and brightest, which is what you would get from Apollo 13. Tom Hanks, right? These are the best of the best.
They'll probably make a Hollywood movie and cast Matthew McConaughey as Don Pettit, in the new commemorative.
Oh, where's my audio?
Hilarious.
They're just like that because what are you going to do after we film this roll?
He's totally on a green
There's a
screen.
force on, you can't see it. What are you going to do after we film this roll?
All right, that's enough. Yeah, Don Pettit is ridiculous.
Oh my god.
So let's just let's scroll through here. If you haven't already, we encourage you guys to join our official Telegram. You can find the link on zetetic.news. There's a button on the right hand side. I'm also putting the link in the description of this live stream. We're hoping we've already got some rigorous participation, and this will just be a constant resource for us to aggregate the most important links and memes for us to dissect and discuss on the cast. So that's going to be a gold mine for us going forward. And I don't know that Telegram is the panacea of censor free, so it may just be another one of these channels that we use to feed people back to the main sort of primary content and website. But I love the platform. It's good format, and we're starting to come out with our own stickers, our own Wojaks. I've been doing some sketching, and in the Telegram you can how do we do the stickers here? I don't know if it might just be on my phone that I can do that, but anyways,
Awesome.
Oh yeah, let's talk about Texas. And the not only the power situation and the Chinese control over our electric grid, but I mean, obvious candidate for weather warfare event.
Absolutely,
right?
I mean, I think it was episode 17, perhaps it was the one before the election, but we were talking about the likelihood of food supply disruptions, electrical grid disruptions sometime in the winter. We didn't know exactly where, but it'd probably be the result of some sort of massive snowstorm or weather event.
And I think we played at the time Biden's comment about a dark winter, which we're not the first people to observe that. I mean, that was kind of a major news story even when it happened, if you're on the right websites. But I definitely want to look at the Texas thing through the lens of it being possibly weather warfare. And to me, it's not about people will listen to this and be like, well, where's the proof? Show me the proof that it's that it was a manipulated event. And we might be able to point out some anomalies or other things, and they may or may not persuade you, but we don't have to have the full answer.
Right.
It's just about changing the conversation to one where we are in a reality that is congruent with reality. And that's my main point of even talking about it, is everybody listens to the weather on TV as if it is this Mother Earth supernatural event that doesn't have anything to do with man-made activities. Now, everybody agrees climate change is caused by humans, but it's never directed at the people who actually are doing large-scale experiments with the weather that could result in a extreme weather event. No, it's you driving in your car and heating your house that's doing that. You did it to Texas, not
Right.
The Chinese CCP with a 1 trillion watt microwave sitting south of the border somewhere.
Right. Which they have been amassing large scale military infrastructural equipment.
And they'll say,
south of the border.
well, do you have proof? Where's the Google Maps of the CCP installation? And I'm like, I'm not saying that. I'm saying we've talked about this before. Weather modification, weather warfare is a thing. And so when there's a anomalous once in 2 centuries, by the way, we haven't even really been keeping track like that for 2 centuries, at least.
Oh no. We've already detailed, architectural anomalies that are less than 120 years old.
Right.
So
I'm going to play this clip real quick just to sort of set the tone of that.
I'm out here in Temple, Texas, in the middle of the storm, okay? The snow and ice and rain has been very real. We're stuck, we're stranded, and all kinds of stuff, okay? But I've been seeing these videos about the snow being fake, and this weather is extremely abnormal for Texas. I'm talking about sub-zero temps, okay? People got frost in their houses and everything. So now what I'm getting ready to do is conduct my own experiment by collecting snow and ice and record this mess, because I couldn't believe what I was seeing in these videos of people saying this stuff is not melting. We just did it, and it actually turns black, and it's not dripping water. So I'm going to collect the snow. Alright, so I'm going to try to get the freshest snow. Alright, so under the ice, alright, so under the ice is the powdery snow, and the snow is like super, super, super powdery. I just figured because it was dry, the climate is kind of dry, and then I'm going to get a piece of the ice also. Alright, so that's the ice and that's the snow. Alright, let's take it inside. Alright, so I'm back indoors, and y'all saw me collect the snow. All right, so when I saw the video, she was using a candle to melt the snowball, but it turned black. So I'm like, okay, well, is it like residue from the candle? So I got a candle and I have a lighter, and I'm gonna try to do both and see if they get different effects. But it's crazy. So you saw me collect the piece of ice and the powdery snow. So I got the powdery snow right here. I'm gonna go ahead and make a ball with it. Okay, here we go. Okay. I'm not a professional YouTuber. I mean, I got kids in the back, whatever. Alright, so here we go. I'm gonna light this with the candle first. Oops, sorry. Alright, there we go. Just watch. This is some trippy stuff. Oh, it's messing up the lighting in my video. Okay. There's nothing. Look at that shit. What the fuck? Oh, why is it turning black? Look at that. Can you see that? The fuck? Why is it turning black?
Okay, maybe.
Okay, this is insane. Okay, where is the drippage? Now look, it's disappearing.
Because it is, the candle
what the
resin.
Fuck? It's turning black. What in the whole
she made
hell
it
would
harder.
cause
She
a
bunched it into
snowball
a
to
ball.
turn black? Okay, this is the shit that I'm sorry. This is the mess that is freaking me. What the? It smells.
But this is a worthwhile.
It smells like, oh my god.
Zetetic
Yo,
right.
This is
like,
not ice,
am I
yo. This
supposed
is
to
the
deny
trippiest shit
all
ever,
my
yo.
experience with
This
snow?
shit smells.
Well, I
Leading
saw,
up to
oh my
this
I saw
fucking god.
pictures. Of
Oh my god, yo, you
other-
gotta put this
there
going
were
on
multiple of
YouTube.
these types of videos
Yo, this
out
shit
there just
has a fucking smell. What the
it went
fuck is
viral,
this?
and, YouTube
This
didn't-
shit ain't normal.
they didn't clamp
This
down
is
on
the
the
layer of ice
disinformation
that
fast
came
enough, and
after
so,
the
a
snowfall.
bunch of people
Okay,
were
I've been here,
inspired
I've
to
been
make
riding
videos,
this
but they're
stuff
not
out.
qualified scientists.
Oh, I'm supposed to do it with the
I'm
light
sure
next.
that's
Here,
the
hold that.
criticism that will be, waged to.
Okay, so maybe it was the candle residue, right? That's what I was
the thing,
thinking, right? Let's try the lighter. Maybe I don't know what the hell this shit is. I really don't.
They can literally say whatever they want.
Right.
I mean, it's cold.
They can literally
It's still
say,
cold.
"Oh, well, because of the
lighter
because of the
cannot be given the same
temperature
effect.
difference
Look at that shit.
between outside and inside."
And it's popping. You hear it
actually
popping?
made the snow.
Did you hear that popping sound?
Less
This turning black
like
too.
water and more like water.
What is it
They
popping?
can
Why is
literally
it
say something
popping?
absurd like that.
Oh my god!
And people
oh
will
my
be
god!
like,
Okay,
"Oh, yeah,
all right. Give me
that
that.
is
I don't even make YouTube
100%
videos, y'all. Okay, I
legitimate
felt so compelled because
scientific
when else am I going to have this
We're
opportunity?
bad for even talking about it. You're a fucking moron. You're a loony. Blah blah blah. And it's like, hey,
What the fuck is this? What
do
the fuck? I mean,
have
like,
a
we was eating
degree
icicles.
in
What the hell is
XYZ,
this?
Pre-approved.
This is not normal. This is not, even if you're not a believer in like geoengineering
but are we
and
not
like
allowed to have
weather manipulation and heart,
discuss
you can't deny.
hypotheses and
You can't deny
evaluate
that shit. This
the
smells like somebody
evidence.
burning
And,
plastic.
you
Do you smell
like
that?
we've
That
talked
smells
about
like burnt
before, weather
plastic.
warfare
Yo.
is an
Okay,
admitted
so what I
fact.
did was I said,
And
okay,
so it
I
deserves
know that this water bottle that was sitting in my
examination.
car is
you know,
made from spring
one of these
water. Well, I
videos,
thought I knew because I thought I knew. I thought
I'm
snow
not
was snow,
necessarily
but you know
persuaded in
nothing.
10 of these
I don't know
videos
nothing
where,
no more. Like I don't.
you know,
Okay, so
different
this
areas,
is
I've seen pictures of
spring
snow
water.
that had melted,
and I bought it. Here, hold this
like
chemical.
this chemical.
I bought it in here
type
because I was like, okay, it's in the
residue,
car.
and then it's like, oh,
I
well,
didn't
that's just
open this
pollution from
before.
some-
This is going to be. This is
or
a sealed bottle.
You don't know.
I was like, okay, I know
any
this
better
is
than
natural,
me,
but I want to
so
believe
you
that this is
can put that
natural
theory
water.
forward,
Okay,
but
I
I'm not
really
gonna
want to
tell you
believe them
conspiracy
because it
theory
say
for
Alpine
saying,
spring
oh,
water,
that's just
and it
pollution from
say
nearby
that you know a
plant. Maybe it
bottle
is.
at the
Maybe it is
at the
Alpine spring.
CGR
part of the-
spring
part
near
of it.
the
Yeah.
Ochia
but I'm not going to
Mountains
rule out
of Norman,
stratospheric
Arkansas.
aerosol
Was
injections
it
either.
Absolutely.
whatever. I think it's spring
smart
water. Okay,
You know?
this is not
let's
funny.
talk
My
about
whole
smart
world
does.
is just messed up
You know,
right now.
'cause
Okay,
while I'm
you
trying
can't
to
even drink
navigate
eat
through
the
the
icicles
Telegram
outside no
wars,
more. This shit
I know
ain't
we
natural.
brought
Okay, let me
that
get the
up.
water. Let me get the ice out. Let me put pause.
There
Let me
was
get
a
the ice out.
post on Nextdoor, which is a
All right, because I need y'all to
social
see this. I
media,
need y'all to see this. I'm getting
blog
real ice.
essentially for neighbors
Real
to
ice.
connect.
This
even
water
though
bottle
we're
came
more
out of my
divided
car.
than ever
Cause I got,
before,
I'm just, my
despite
mind is just
such
really jacked up.
technologies.
Now this is
And,
ice.
I'm gonna make a new TikTok.
I'm
heavy
recording. I'm still
censorship
recording.
too.
I'm so
They're
unprofessional. I
totally subject.
apologize for the people who
That's
watching this video.
another
Okay, so anyway,
Somebody posted pictures of
so this is ice right here. Okay, you see, it just
stratospheric
came out this
aerosol
bottle. I cut the
injections
top
that
of
they
it off.
saw
All right. So
in
now,
their blue sky and said, "Hey, did anybody else see this?" And I saw the same thing that same day.
Look at
'cause
it.
they're within a
It's
certain
turning
area
black.
here. And when I see it,
What is the
I
blackness
point it
that's
out
on
for what
this?
it is. I'm like, "Hey, you see the
What in
chemtrails, you
the
see-"
world?
Anyways,
I thought it
what's
was
this?
red.
Nobody had commented.
hold
so
on, wait a
I
minute.
went
What's,
on there
why is it turning
and I
black?
and I
Hold on,
was the
hold
first one to
on.
basically
No, something
drop
got to be
the-
explained about
the
this.
weather
It's
modification
got to
bomb.
be
Of course
from the
it,
flame itself.
you know, created a fervor. Some people were
Come on,
agreeing
yo.
that they weren't.
Why is
verbose
okay?
Right. They're like,
Look at the
They
blackness coming from
liked
in the
my
water. Okay,
comment, but
Right.
wouldn't really.
there is blackness
a
coming
couple
up.
people
It
did
gotta
speak
be-
up
okay,
and
maybe
were
it's
the flame.
cognizant of what was going on.
It's
But
the
then
flame, but
this
it's
other
cold,
guy
it's melting though.
was like,
Look.
you know, those are contrails, of course, the standard argument, right?
Okay,
and,
no,
and
hold
I
on. Let me see.
preempted it. I preempted that. But then he sends me this like fact sheet
It's actually
that he
put-
got from the EPA about this being
No,
debunked.
is it the is it the flame
but
that's
in
making
that
this stuff black?
document,
Or
in that
or is
document,
it-
okay, get this, they do
come on, we got
admit
more ice somewhere else.
that
Come on, I need more ice. I need more ice.
condensation trails
like,
may may affect the weather, but it's not intentional. That's what it said in the EPA certified
somebody need to
document.
explain this to me.
And I was just
is
like,
ice
dude,
supposed to turn
you
black
don't-
when you put a flame
are
to it?
missing the forest through the
It's
trees.
not supposed to
And
smell
then
like
he went so
plastic,
far
though.
as to say,
Like,
Right, that's
well,
definitely not.
you know,
hold the fuck up, hold, Imani.
you can trust the
Yo,
EPA,
smell it, smell it.
except for the
You
last
could-
4 years because of Trump.
Smell it.
And I'm just like, oh, you're one of these people.
oh, you're one of those.
What the hell is going
Yeah.
on here?
Okay, wait.
Yeah,
It gotta
well,
be the
that's the
flame.
thing
Maybe
is,
the fire
that
is
goes
organic
back to the
fire.
whole
Like somebody needs to
politicization
explain this
of
to me. Like is it because
And if
the
you can
flame
create
is
a
coming from
subjective,
the what you call this,
quandary
the
in
lighter
people's
fluid?
minds that, oh, well,
Because look at the
there
wick of my
can't be
candle.
anything
The wick of my
nefarious going
candle
on when it
tip
comes
is
to
black.
science,
So is it
because
because the residue
trust and
of the
believe
fire
in
itself that's
frequency.
causing the
It's
water?
like the
Okay,
white
Yeah.
coats.
now this is freezer
That's
ice.
right.
Scientists are
That's
kind
right.
of in that same class as
This don't even-
white coats.
Absolutely,
It's not-
absolutely.
like
People
snow.
Okay.
extend way too much credit
All right.
to them.
Freezer ice.
Okay,
Now, this
here we
is
go. Smart
not
dust.
natural ice.
These are made by
It
Hitachi.
This is going into 10 minutes.
And they measure
Teeny. You can barely see it.
0.15
Okay, I think at this point, I think it's the lighter.
0.15 millimeter
It gotta be the
each
fire
and have
from the-
GPS capabilities, sometimes
This
called
one is
smart
eating this
dust,
one up though.
as they can be
Okay,
sprayed on us
freezer
and absorbed or
ice
taken in food
Also
streams
turn black.
and
Okay,
even
all right. So
injected.
now I'm seeing some level of consistency because this is
did
spring
a
water that I
normie
drink. That
Wikipedia
blackness is
search,
coming from the
and
fire
it's
itself.
there. Smart dust
Because
is
when
a
I
system
put the
of
snow,
many
the
tiny
fluffy snow in a pot,
micro-electromechanical
I was able to
systems,
melt it down to
such as
water.
sensors, robots, or other devices
wash
that can
this-
detect, for example, light, temperature,
All right, so y'all
vibration,
weigh in, make some
magnetism, or
comments. Y'all tell me
chemicals.
what y'all think. I mean, my mind is blown, but now that
Surely
I've done
they
it with
have
different
lots
types of
of,
ice, I'm feeling a little differently.
Industrial
know.
applications, but I wonder if they
darn.
We had a
have
fireplace
anything to
and
do with humans.
burnt up all the wood we had. There's just this
Concept
is
for
sad.
smart dust
This is
emerged
sad
from a
state of affairs.
workshop
I wish it were
at
better,
Rand
but
Corporation in
you know,
1992.
somebody's got to do
Well,
some
Rand is
planning
a
after
bunch
all
of
this is
really
over.
amazing,
And make sure there's some
intelligent people. You
alternative
should
source
trust
of
everything
energy.
they create.
And the DARPA Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency.
Basically, like the
As
same
we
agency
continue to
of
manage
military. If you don't like
the bitter
DARPA,
cold,
then,
the historic storm we're seeing, we are trying
DARPA's
to
amazing.
get people's power back on as quickly as
No,
possible.
no conflict of interest
But
whatsoever.
in order to do that,
Trust
we
them
need to be able to safely
The
manage
proposal,
the
this is,
balance of the supply and
I
demand
guess
on the
when
grid.
it was first developed at Berkeley, proposal to build wireless sensor nodes with a volume of 1 cubic millimeter was selected for funding in 1998. Yeah, that's incredible.
Wow, I mean, but then that's the thing about Wikipedia. People look at it, they're like, so it's got a Wikipedia listing. That probably means it's trustworthy. It probably means there's nothing wrong with it. There's no conflict of
ERCOT's
interest.
fundamental
It's on
job
Wikipedia.
is to maintain that
Isn't
supply
it
and demand,
interesting how
so we don't have
people
catastrophic
turn to
collapses of the system and
defend
blackouts.
the
We
big
asked the local
corporate
utilities to
oligarchs who are
reduce the
mandating
amount of
this
power
COVID
they
lockdown
use
and everything,
in order
and
to keep
they
the
were
overall system in
supposedly,
Texas operating
you know,
safely.
fighting against them, a few months ago.
Well, that's the thing about being woke.
We
if
need to
if you're
keep
told to be woke in a
power
different
flowing
way,
safely and
then
effectively.
you got to be woke in that.
And
way.
when we saw,
not the way
particularly
that you
Sunday
previously
night,
thought
as the
you were
storm
woke
blew
up.
in,
Because if Lord
the operators
Gates
at
and St.
ERCOT
Fauci
are
say
thinking
so,
about that safety and that
you gotta
margin
be
for
woke to
safety
that.
all the time.
more than woke to
We would not
their
have asked for any
replete
customer
history of corruption
to
and
have to be
fraud
without
and,
power, particularly in
probably
this
murder
terrible
and
cold situation,
trafficking.
unless
I
we needed to
I
manage
triggered
the
a
overall
relative
security
really hard
of the electric
recently.
grid. So when
on
we
that note,
first asked for those outages
they
to happen,
Posted
that was
a,
paramount, and it remains so.
NPR Instagram post about how vaccination would lead to herd immunity and the stages of that and what it sort of a visualized graphical representation of what that would look like, and I was just like, and basically essentially the gist was things won't go back to normal till we get here, and I was like, hey dude, it doesn't matter how much vaccination we get, things are not going to go back to normal. This is never about herd immunity. It was always about politico-economic
Let me ask you
control.
about Palantir, which we just found out you've added to. Can you tell our viewers why
we had a back and forth,
you
and he
added
was
rather
basically
significantly
like,
to your stake in Palantir?
He didn't deny.
They reported
that
yesterday, and the stock was
oligarchically
down on the
controlled
report.
consortium of corporate and
It's
financial
interesting
interests
to listen
internationally.
to the CEO.
But he said
was
they're
speaking our
distraction
language.
from
He
the
essentially
local
said
and
to
state
investors,
people
we
who
are
are
playing
screwing
in a
us
massive
locally.
space
And I'm
here,
like,
and
well,
we're going
I'm not
to
going to
invest
deny
aggressively
that we
now
have local
in order to
fiefdoms
capitalize
and
on
political
the
corruption in
exponential
a
changes that are taking
more
place here.
a closer
So if
proximity.
you are
That has to
short-term
be
in
dealt
your
with
focus,
too. Sure, but one begets
you
the other.
probably don't want to spend
And
too much time.
how could you
investing in
say the
Palantir.
one? It's like
So
there was a
that's music
guy
to our
in here
ears
pointing a
because-
gun at you,
and we do believe more and more
saying to
companies
you,
are going to
"You're going
start
to take this
behaving
gun
in this
I have
way
in my
instead
left
of
hand, and you're
catering
going
to
to point it at him,
short-term
or I'm going to shoot you."
time
I
horizons.
don't blame you
and
or consider him a
we would say,
distraction.
in some cases,
He's the
short-sighted
one making you do
shareholders
what
who are
you're
much more
doing.
interested in
So
profits now.
don't know how you
dividends
can
now, share
disconnect that.
repurchases now,
Well,
than they
I think
are
part of it,
in a company
people want to
investing
feel like
aggressively for
they're
going
not
short-term
rocking the boat.
profitability.
And if the
in
boat's
order
rocking them,
to really
they're going to try to
catch
just
some
go along with it.
very big waves out
And
there.
again, that's the whole
So
Bernaysian
I'm astonished.
paradigm that everyone has been
Their
inculcated into.
revenues are
is
still
just
61%
accept
government.
what
But I've learned, and I think most people in the innovation space have learned over time,
authorities,
that some of the most important
leaders
innovations
of us heard
in our lifetimes have started in the government, especially in the defense sector and in the intelligence sector. So we think in many ways, and they won't talk about how, but they're certainly garnering a lot of business, which tells us that they
are seen as enlightened,
seeing in the
if
future
you just accept and acquiesce
investing
and
in the
even grovel
future
to that.
in ways that
And that's
companies,
the social conditioning
governments,
that's in place right now.
But
And it is
increasingly
really,
companies are going to
it's extremely aggressive,
need, especially as we're competing against China. I think we've been
how often are people going to really
with the short-term time horizon, we have not been spending enough in innovation. And
especially when everything is
Palantir's attitude is refreshing. It's exactly how we invest. We want our companies to invest aggressively. We don't want profits now. We want them to invest aggressively because we're moving into many winner-take-most markets. And the autonomous taxi world is a very good example of that. That is why our confidence in Tesla, going back to the largest position in our portfolio, is so high.
I'm going to ask you about more stocks in just a moment. You spoke of a lot of the stocks in the flagship fund as having a longer runway than maybe some would suggest the pandemic would say.
A godlike
it seems undeniable to me, though, that you must be thinking about the impact of higher rates on the kinds of stocks
at this point
that have been tried and true winners
for
you all throughout, whether it's the Signature Fund, the FinTech Innovation Fund, and even other areas of the ETFs that you have.
Is this food for
Are you worried that as rates go up, those stocks could come down?
I'm so disturbed by
I do believe if rates were to take a sharp
we've been in this
turn
boiling
up,
pot,
that we would see a valuation reset, and our portfolios would.
It's not like I didn't notice it before. People
prime candidates for that valuation reset.
We've talked about that before.
Now, one of the things that I found interesting over the last, over the last really 20 years is that the S&P's PE ratio tends to peak out in the 20 to 25 times range of the forward earnings.
Bring up the
and I
fact
think
that
the reason
vaccines
for that
damage dozens
is
of thousands of people.
most portfolio managers and maybe quantitative
and so
research.
you were the miscreant.
Researchers
you're the miscreant.
are looking at normalized nominal GDP growth in
Forget
the 4
about
to 5%
talking about weather
range,
warfare.
Which is where
I just see that as, I mean, who needs an army anymore? When
we
you
actually
can,
think normalized
you basically have slave
GDP
factories
growth
manufacturing
is probably
airplanes,
closer
and you
to
can drive
3.
them robotically.
Now, if you think,
and you got
that's
smart
where
dust and
long-term
other,
interest rates stabilize.
fluoride, other
you think
additives
20
to
25
essentially
times, that's
transform
1 over
the
4 to 5%
beans
growth.
beneath,
So it's the inverse of the
how
growth
do you make
rate,
a plant
the
grow?
nominal
You
GDP growth.
spray it with
and that's
something
where
that
it seemed to be peaking out.
boosts
We think
that
there's
capacity.
actually
Well, they're trying to
longer
transform
term.
us.
I agree with you, Scott.
And,
there will be a valuation reset.
These same
there will
people
be
who are promoting
fear,
the vaccine,
I'm sure, and
they
we
also
will use it to
will
our
come out and
benefit,
defend
concentrating our
by saying,
portfolio
well, it's
to
not
our highest conviction names.
going to change your DNA.
But I think
That's
longer term, especially given the
bogus.
powerful
And it's like,
growth trajectories
you can't have your cake and eat it too. You can't have it be an
around which we
experimental
revolve
RNA
all of our
vaccine
research.
That's never been
those trajectories
out there.
are so powerful that these
and not say it doesn't change your DNA.
These companies are going to grow into their multiples a lot faster.
And it's interesting too because
we have
investors
no
are now expecting.
understanding
so
of
that's
what the
a source of
consequences
confidence for
will
us.
be.
Steve Weiss has a
That's
question
what makes
for
it
you,
experimental.
Kathy.
I mean, in previous years, how many years
Hey, Kathy, good to see
does
you
it take
again.
to come out with a quote unquote
So
certified?
my question plays off what Scott just asked you.
Vax that is directed at so
supposedly
and isolate.
Smart dust exists. It's kind of like weather warfare, right? So weather warfare exists. So when there's a really crazy anomalous weather event, you can't rule that out as possibility. Smart dust exists, so you can't really verify or rule out that such a thing or technology isn't in those vaccines.
Right. You cannot rule it out.
Especially when they are admitting that they are working to those ends.
Yeah, and they openly admit it. Again, it's this same double standard boondoggle where you can admit that something is happening as long as you're celebrating it. But the second that you try to criticize it, it's not happening.
because
that goes across the board. There's so many different.
What we will do during a correction, especially a severe correction like the coronavirus crisis presented,
it's okay if you brag about it.
Sell names which are creating
as soon as you have
losses now because
or
again
reservations
we've bought them, we've diversified.
Oh, you're crazy
for
thinking that it's going on.
Sell those names, creating losses.
We can go down the laundry list of examples.
Some of the names we've been moving in
where how that double standard is applied.
Are names like
yeah, look at this. Yeah. Did you see this?
I did.
They're now like it's like they're paying tattoo artists now
and
to
what we will
brand
do during and we think of them as cash-like, but there's also a reason, an investment reason we are moving into them.
Multi-billion-dollar
we think they're deep
pharmaceutical
value names because these
companies, I have to bring this up because
they are able to use the convergence of technologies that is taking place today in the genomic revolution. So DNA sequencing, artificial intelligence, once again,
almost pugilistic
and gene
vaccine
therapies,
supporters. They are also
new technologies,
very much
new ways of doing
Trump
things.
delusionment people.
They
anti-Trump.
are investing
but
aggressively
think about
now.
that.
They have to because they've lost a lot of their pipelines.
Everything
or
that
will
Trump
soon do
touched.
So. And
not
we
a
think
defense
the
of Trump
returns
here.
on investment in the biotech
everything
space,
that he touched
I'm talking big
was
biotech,
shit. It was
if
the
they're
worst.
doing this
it was
correctly,
awful.
could
irredeemable.
But then
unforgivable.
He did this ridiculous. I think one of the biggest mistakes he made was
we saw 20 to 30%.
Operation.
So we're using them as cash-like instruments
basically
in some way because we will move back into our pure play names.
Doing an about
if we get into a severe correction.
They did.
But we also
had him over a barrel,
see the investment
and
merit in these names. They're just not pure play names. So we use corrections toggling back and forth. And so right now our flagship,
just like in Hollywood. Did you ever see that Mel Gibson interview
52
where he's like,
names in it?
You're supposed to be chummy with people who you know are going to stab you in the back.
It was as low as 33, I believe.
You know,
that's
Kathy,
crazy.
Bob's
and
wrap
it's the
it up,
same thing in
you.
politics.
I have one quick question.
You have to be
What
chummy
do you
with
view
people
of the
that you know are going to
SPACs
stab you
right
in the
now? Would you ever
Well,
invest
that
in these SPACs?
to me is
we are investing
characteristic
in them.
of his whole time in office.
We think there's
he had,
DraftKings,
he had some good rhetoric,
Butterfly,
but
that merger was just consummated today.
The challenge
Blade, which I think is still going under
getting
the name
into
Experience. So
you can't be in the office of the
presidency
and
has not been consummated yet. So
you know,
yes, we're being very
There's
careful.
No way.
There's no way.
We don't
There's no way.
like
It's impossible.
the opacity in some of these.
So yeah, this is crazy.
Classic example.
I'm proud to
have been jabbed by
the incentive system.
Look at my serial number on my jab.
But
this is a way for venture capital.
That's probably a trend. There's probably like 50,000 people who've already done that.
Have liquidity events.
I bet you. I mean, you watch by the end of the year, it's going to be like fax tattooed social media.
Opportunity
it's been very. I
innovation-oriented names much sooner than.
I know. I don't want to admit it myself either.
Just the IPO process. We understand.
The New York police are rolling out the DARPA DARPA robots.
Kathy, we've only got a couple minutes left, so I'll need a quick answer. We want to
just
ask
right
about
there.
something that's exciting a lot of us here at
York.
CNBC, and that's the Mars landing tomorrow. It's going to be one of the great technology feats of all time. I know you filed for a space ETF. Can you tell us what excites us about space? You said earlier in December it's important to get on the right side of change and stay on the right side of change because it's hit escape velocity. Is that what this is about? Is space another part of that whole change paradigm that you keep talking about?
Well, that's just a clip. It just shows that they're rolling around. But yeah, I mean, the audio that you were just playing there, space ETF. Oh man. Fraud on top of fraud on top of fraud.
Well, Elon Musk says that we're going to be traveling to space, daily by 2025.
Yeah.
How many of those projections they've kind of gone the way of global warming projections?
Absolutely. Every single one. Every single one. It keeps getting pushed back and pushed back and pushed back.
I don't think Virgin Galactic is doing their space tourism at this point.
Nope.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, if Elon has his way, people will be paying him $1 million a ticket to go into the VR experience and think that it's real.
And
because by then we might have the helmets,
and they'll get a NFT token, digitally representing the experience they had, and And that'll trade on the open market.
I can prove that I went to Mars.
Exactly.
Look at my digital stamp.
So we've
my
talked
QR
about
code.
like Corey Goode and David Wilcock in that show on Gaia TV before, haven't we? One of the things, since we're talking about Mars and the VR and what space really is, it was interesting in his testimony that he claimed, this Corey Goode guy, and it's kind of interesting because there's a lawsuit happening between Corey Goode and Cliff High, who Bix Weir is real good friends with, over this very subject, actually. But he claims he was part of the secret space program of a 20 and back program where they served 20 years on this colony we have on Mars. But I listened to his episode, and what was interesting retrospectively with the whole sort of hyperplane revelations is he doesn't describe, most people would hear the testimony, I worked on a colony on Mars. They would think, just like NASA, right? They're blasting off in a rocket and going through. He never said any of that.
Right.
It was more like he was taken to an Air Force base and essentially apparated from one place to the other. And it's like, well, you could just be apparating to somewhere else on Earth.
That's right.
And you're just being told it's Mars.
Absolutely.
And he talks a lot about the brain drain after World War II, where all the best scientists, the Operation Paperclip is just a tippy. That's publicly announced, right?
That's publicly announced.
And there was basically a sequestration of intellect.
Oh yeah.
Into the secret space program, and these people were given contracts. This is according to him. You don't have to believe everything he says, but he seems like he believes what he's saying, right? And I do think there probably is something to it, because he's not the only person saying that there's a secret space program and that there was a sequestration of intellect through the universities. These people were recruited, given perhaps alternate identities in some cases, and they were told they were doing this great thing. I actually have a relative who claims, on a much lower level, through the Army, an experience he had in the Army, that he participated at some level in a secret space program of sorts, where at minimum there was technology that was just normal in that sector of the military industrial complex that totally, would transform our world if we were to have access to it. Of course, I'm talking about levitation and free energy. But also the holographic deception of this idea of Mars, because just as much as, like with Eric Dubay, the imagery can be faked. If you get drunk enough, you won't even know where you are. Right. So they have ways of chemically altering your mind, and
that's right.
And basically creating a fictitious reality. So
sure,
what is Mars?
Well, it's the god of war. So I mean, cryptically, when we're saying, we landed on Mars, that's really the Masonic language for, all right, we're in the middle of a hardcore war. It's a silent war, and we're using quiet weapons, but it's still a war. And so, every time they go to Mars, if you look back in history, every single time that they've gone to Mars, it's coincided with some sort of major conflagration that's going on.
Like when Bush randomly announced, like, in the worst of the Iraq war, it's probably everything was falling apart in the Middle East, and he was like, we're going to Mars. And it's like, what?
Yeah.
Why now?
Well, I mean, we might as well consecrate our ritual to the god of war, because we've been waging silent war with quiet weapons on the human resources that we need to call. And that's the elite mentality. It's the deep misanthropy, thanatoid hyperbole.
Dude, isn't it crazy? In our even probably before our January 2020 episode, we were talking about the robot apocalypse, essentially, and of course we highlighted the DARPA, Boston Dynamics dogs, and we're not. You don't have to be a genius to see them developing it and thinking, oh, well, they're going to be on the street soon, policing us. It's like, duh. We played Elysium, that part of the movie that's a thing. And then a year later, this is in New York City. New York City is done.
It's done.
It is fucking...
It's a rat nest.
I heard 92% of diners do not have...
Nothing.
Money for rent this next month.
Nope.
What do you think is going on with the Cuomo thing? Cuomo's being sort of like, you know how they do, they sacrifice their servants.
They absolutely do. That's part of like the whole neo-Bolshevik or former Bolshevik ritual is you get people who are the most vociferous advocates of the lie get publicly executed. Just to show that there is no beneficial arrangement when you're a pawn to this agenda. You're a disposable resource to them. Once you fulfill your role, if you don't keep, if you don't have any ongoing worth, then the establishment disposes of you. And that's probably happening to Cuomo to some extent. He's kind of run his course. He in 2020 proved effective at diverting a lot of New York attention away from Trump and creating his own little cult of personality around his orange and yellow and red zones, and how he's such a fearless leader and yada yada. And they needed him as like a limited hangout to just psychologically traumatize the citizens of New York and get them to engage in a kind of mass Stockholm syndrome.
I'm not surprised at all to hear that he may have been sexually inappropriate. You kind of just look at the guy and hear how he bullies people, and it's like, he's a major predator.
Oh, absolutely. and he was probably one of the few that not a lot of information came out about him related to Epstein, probably because they needed him to come out and do this whole corona hoax operation in New York. So because how much do you want to bet that he's been in Epstein Island? Come on.
That's kind of big in New York, right?
Yeah. And it's still, that's the thing. It's like, just a little over a year ago, we were still on the heels of the faked suicide.
Right. And that was gaining a lot of traction.
Huge.
Well, look, we just posted this tweet that was, I don't know, shit biscuit on Twitter, but July 8th, 2019, very apropos. They say, I wonder which apocalypse, rage virus, alien invasion, etc., is going to happen to prevent half the world's leadership from being taken down by the Epstein trial. Boo. And we were I think I was pretty negative on the idea that the trial would result in a, because how these the justice system,
the injustice system,
can be played with people with resources.
Absolutely.
It's really putting on a show in the trial, and that's if it ever got to trial. People don't realize how many steps there are, before it could get there. So at a minimum, he's in jail for years before any sort of justice. And of course, he would be able to argue for house arrest, and then it's just like you're not in jail.
It pretty much. Oh yeah, didn't he have to do some like ceremonial like sleepover at the jail? It was Alexander Acosta who, Department of Transportation, head under Trump. He gave him that sweetheart deal. So I think that the Epstein thing is still like a huge, like, bubbling under the surface realization.
Every once in a while, you'll see a report about how bad Ghislaine is doing in jail, and it's like, can we get an interview with her? Media, right. You're just going to report about, she's concerned about getting COVID in jail. Like, I give a fuck, you know?
If it's even really her in jail.
Right. I mean, exactly.
Come on. I mean, you know, someone who has that much dirt on that many people with that many resources, who literally grew up in a castle, basically. You don't think that she's got the means to have a trigger woman? I mean, come on. I mean, at this point, you know, I still think that Epstein's, you know, drinking Mai Tais somewhere on some remote island. I mean,
probably in South America with Hitler, which came out that fucking happened.
Yeah,
that fucking happened. He didn't die in a bunker.
Nope.
He probably was on a submarine, or probably more likely a levitation craft of some sort. We know that the Germans were into that.
Yeah.
What were those guys called? The who were supposedly interfacing with transdimensional beings and getting high-tech downloads for the Nazi army.
Was
the
that
Vril Society?
The Vril,
right?
Yep, the Vril. Mm-hmm.
You described them previously as
the
being
Vril
like,
Society. They were like Cousin It.
Cousin It.
You know,
yes.
they grew their hair long all the way down to basically their
That's
toes.
because they knew that it was an antenna, right?
Yeah.
The hair strands was an antenna to pick up
the
information.
And that's a whole, you know, there's a whole realm of exploration you can go into, the whole like occult aspects with the rise of the Third Reich and all the secret societies that were, you know, enmeshed and led that entire episode. And it's interesting because, you know, New Schwabia or Schwabenland, right, was a huge military facility in what we call Antarctica.
Mm-hmm.
And makes you wonder if they had advanced submarines and, you know, undetectable to radar back then. Do you think that they might have done some pretty impressive exploration south of the border beyond the 78th parallel? I think it's likely. It's likely that there was a lot of secret information that, again, got buried or sequestered, and a front-facing public propaganda campaign was rolled out around aliens and space and all this sort of stuff. Because prior to, you know, 1950, there wasn't interest in going to the luminaries. People knew that humans didn't dominate the sky. It's not our domain. We need to focus on things that are more important.
Like there isn't plenty of empty space here to explore. You mentioned the, you know, the
exactly.
Submarines and so on. I mean, even the official line is, well, there's more explored on the moon than there is of our own oceans. And it's like, then what the fuck are we doing up there? If we've already explored more of it and it's barren, why are we, you know, pouring trillions of black budget dollars into this black hole? Which is exactly what's happening.
That's exactly what it is.
And, you know, all of the real tech that comes out is shit like smart dust and hyper aware drone technology and robots that are actually policing us here on Earth, rather than, you know, and you look at our so-called advanced spacecraft, our best advanced spacecraft, it's a fucking joke.
It's a joke. I mean, where is the omnidirectional maglev, you know, hyperetheric engine technology? They have that. They can probably travel Mach 10 in one of those things.
Well, it's just a matter of, it's like teleportation at a certain point.
At a certain point, I mean, if they can generate levitation through electromagnetic activity, they can create a node system that can pinpoint coordinates.
Yeah.
And you can go like incredible distances and in a very short time. So I mean, I really think that this black budget, technological suppression agenda is really part and parcel to the need to present all of this spacefaring. Don't worry, we'll explore the next frontier in 5 years, and then 5 years after that, and then 5 years after that, and then it's just a giant scam.
What's interesting though about this time is it's just so dramatic. Like, you think about the last time there was a major revolution against a certain order, and what came after that was essentially the Industrial Revolution, and that transformed our world as far as we know. As far as we know, in the epoch, more in 100 years than what they say happened in the preceding 6,000. That seems unbelievable.
That's so silly,
doesn't it?
Yeah, it's a total manufactured yarn.
But at the same time, if it's true that there's all this sequestered technology that maybe pre-existed our endowed history, the one that was handed to us, if we are able to shake off the chains, right? Is there a warehouse of stuff that we're going to come upon, and then doesn't that just present another gang tribalism, over who gets access? It would just be a bunch of squabbling over the technology, unless there's some way to sort of equitably distribute it. If it can be shelved by another oligarch, then we're still in square one.
Well, I mean, it just the elegance of many patents that were just monopolized out of the market by other more wasteful, high production entities like cars. It probably would take a lot more sophistication and compassion for our fellow man to develop, for example, mass maglev autonomous flight technology.
Also, there's an interesting comment here in the YouTube chat, because we are live streaming on YouTube tonight, which I think is a first, maybe.
Is that? I think is it the first time?
It's the first time I think we've done a full episode live and uncut. It'll automatically go on YouTube tonight.
Great.
But this guy Hunter says there have been advancements in every single area of technology except propulsion. Which, you look at our society, that's definitely a truism.
Well, I mean, if you look at communication and how comms have advanced noticeably, but transportation hasn't at all, basically.
Yeah, Joe Rogan had Elon on recently, and Joe asked him, all this technology, have we figured out a better thing than a rubber tire?
Right.
And Elon's like kind of stuttering and kind of said, well, no.
Yeah, which is total BS. I mean, but he did leak on there that, we don't even need fuel for cars. We could just use air compression. Well, wait a second. What about up in the air? Wait. Fluid dynamics don't work so well in the wings of an airplane. Wait. Maybe there isn't fuel in planes.
Do those videos still exist on YouTube? Because I feel like before censorship was a household topic, those were the type of videos that would go missing.
Oh yeah.
Into the night and memory hold, essentially.
Right. Yeah. Like I do recall a channel that was really trying to out this scam, which is again another pseudoscientific scam in aviation, that you need dozens of thousands of gallons of fuel to be loaded into the wings of airplanes, and it's a proven farce. There are not dozens of thousands of gallons that are loaded into an airplane before takeoff. They do a little ceremonial hookup of a hose to the wings, and it's been shown that the gauge of the hose for the amount of fuel that it's supposedly putting in there, they would have to sit there for days to put the amount of fuels that they allege is being put into the wings of those planes, into the fuel compartments of those planes. And the weight that it would actually be, according to the supposed schematics of those fuel compartments. I mean, it's the equivalent of like 30 like Chevy trucks on each wing. It's absurd.
Interesting.
And so that's an example of hidden in plain view, sophisticated technology of compressed air in those Rolls-Royce turbine engines in the airplanes. And that's one reason why they don't like people going up in the air, is they're witnessing, I'm not seeing a lot of smoke coming out of those engines, and I can see on both sides of the plane, and it's a pretty flat, stationary terrain that I'm going over.
Were they saying there's no gas, or
there's a little bit, but not like what they say? There's a ceremonial amount for taxiing around on the ground and for takeoff. But as soon as you're in full flight and you're at altitude, the fuel's spent.
And
it's gone.
Right, to turn the wheels to get you off.
Yeah. The only fuel that's in there is in a teeny little fuel compartment for taxiing around on the runway.
And those hoses that they hook up could easily just be them charging the tanks.
Absolutely. Right? Absolutely. And it could also be a like an air cartridge primer too.
That's kind of what I'm envisioning, right?
That's right.
They'll be like, "Oh, you're not an engineer," blah blah blah. And it's like, but engineers would tell you, like you said, the fluid dynamics and the amount of fuel that they say they put in there. It's crazy. It really is crazy. And I remember these channels. I'm having trouble, of course, finding anything.
Of course, because that completely demolishes the entire official narrative of 9/11. About the jet fuel. The jet fuel did it. Bullshit.
Listen, of course that has all of its problems, but you bring up Building 7, which I did to a reserveman that I happen to know. Actually, he was on the show. What am I saying?
That's right.
Rigoberto. I'm calling you out, homie. Before you were deployed, we talked about Building 7, and I said, "Do you even recall that building falling on that day?" And he was like, "Yeah, I'm aware." And I was like, "Well, how did that happen?" And he said, "Fires." And I'm like, "How did they have fires in them?"
Yeah,
it's not
debris.
Oh, it jumped like blocks away,
and then managed to make its way from outside the building into the basement
and melted the beams, and then it collapsed on itself. Yeah, nothing weird.
Nothing weird about that. That the debris flame from the buildings next to it managed to sneak its way down into the fuel tanks of the building, the propane tanks in the subterranean part of the building, and those blew, and it just free falled into its footprint. Just a perfect explanation. Sure. Thanks, National Institute of Standards and Technology.
Right, and I hear now they're creating a new 9/11 commission for the January 6th insurrection. That wasn't an insurrection.
It's just ridiculous. It's literally saying it's a mountain out of a molehill is almost not accurate. It's literally pointing to a acorn on the ground and calling it Mount Everest, to call what happened on January 6th an insurrection.
Yeah, I mean, they didn't have any credibility to begin with, but this is just insanity. And it's a bunch of these establishment heads who were involved in the previous one, which is a farce.
Right. I mean, and the
mean the 9/11 type commission that didn't actually investigate or come to any valid conclusions or refute all the architects and engineers who provided sort of self-evident smoking gun evidence that it was a controlled demolition.
Yeah.
Oh, that kind of commission? Oh, so more bullshit.
More bullshit.
God.
Well, and the thing that makes the whole NIST Building 7 report so damnable is it is yet another example of this pseudoscientific charlatanry matrix within the whole engineering space, which is supposed to be forensically verifiable, demonstrable, hard science. And they've even subverted that.
Right.
You know, they've subverted it with their stupid
like
little
we
models.
talked about
and,
earlier,
you know,
if it's not convenient to the narrative you're spinning or
That's
the
right.
agenda that you want to serve, then that science gets excluded. It's
Right.
more of a subjective thing. It's not verifiable. It's that there's no such thing as that.
Right.
And you know, it's
yeah,
very a juvenile way of dealing with things. But
well, and it's like this is just another way to leech more tax dollars from people.
Right,
it's
like
just
the
another
Russia
facade.
investigation. I mean, honestly, they all knew that there was nothing to investigate, but they got paid handsome money. That was a career move for them. It was like a major promotion,
right?
You know, to run that whole scam,
right?
And while they're doing it, they get to be on TV again. They get to have a podium where they talk about the findings of the commission. It is an attention thing too. You have to create a scene to get the media there. And if the politicos are boring or, you know, then people will tune into something else, and they know that. And so they have to always be drumming up this drama to get the attention. Because what is it? Politics is Hollywood for ugly people.
That's right.
Essentially.
That's right.
And with the high def TVs, you can definitely see that in better definition than ever before. I need to take a little bio break, so let's do that, and I'll put on a little bit of music for our listeners while we do that.
Definitely.
track and field for the original Nintendo. It was like a big plastic had with.
I did duck hunt.
Okay. So track and field, it was like, you know, they try to do a bunch of like track, but he had this big mat with like little spots, and you would run in place to try to detect, you know, how fast the guy on the screen would go. You know, and they had like triple jump and stuff like that. And you know, if you cheated, you get on the floor. Right. And you know, really like lift them up, and it wasn't like a real jump. So. When niggas is getting tattoos,
yeah,
why spend money? They'll
That's
fucking
right.
pay for it.
That's
Pay to
right.
hurt themselves.
That's right.
I literally just get right. Soul Healing with DJ Cutman. Love that track.
It's nice.
Yeah, I think his dad is playing the harmonica in the background. Pretty sweet. Featuring my dad. That's cool. But we were getting real animated during the break talking about the vaccine because we got a buddy here. We'll not name him. He's not on mic tonight, but was just telling us, he's just chilling. He's shotgunning with us tonight.
Fun.
Was just telling us that his employer is paying people $200 to get the vaccine. And you have to ask yourself, why is the government so motivated to, in their words, get needles into hearts of Americans? And we talked about smart dust earlier. In a previous episode, we talked about Bill Gates's quantum dot digital ID vaccine scheme through ID 2020 and the luciferase patented compound, which allows them to basically, it's like a digital tattoo basically, and store information, probably sense your biometrics, things like that. and just all the schemes to get needles in the arms of Americans. I'll share an anecdote. I work with a lady who is in the New York City area, and she has, obviously been impacted by the COVID-19 lockdowns, as we all have, but especially being in New York City, and then family in California. Okay, so getting from point A to point B during lockdown, some people want to escape lockdown and go if they have another place to go, but the other place to go is like kind of, what's the saying, out of the pot and into the frying pan.
Right.
Anyways, she did not respond to some stuff we were working on, which is unlike her, and reach out, see if she was out of office or anything, and turns out she has been ill because she got the vaccine, second dose, and has just been out of it for days. And the whole year had gone by. We worked together on a regular basis. She was healthy and totally fine the entire time. But the sad, scary thing is, it's unfortunate that I'm ill, but I'm so glad to have gotten the vaccine. And this psychology, this march towards getting those needles in the arms, it's getting very dark from my point of view. And a lot of people would throw you and me under the bus for being anti-vax, and it's like it's more like
we're anti-tyranny.
Anti-tyranny. Also, evaluate the vax. That's always proceed by inquiry. The vax,
right?
And
we're miscreants to the pseudoscience charlatan nature, which we've talked in detail, in pretty much every single episode, and how pervasive it is. But in a way, the vax represents a biotithe. It's a way you signal your appreciation and fealty to the medical matrix, which is the new church to a great extent.
Yeah.
So in a way, it's like, how, for example, back in the bygone era of the church just was the state. There wasn't a pretend
they were
different. They're one and the same. There wasn't a pretend bifurcation like there is today. But back then, even the poorest person had to tithe. And if you didn't go to Sunday service, you were like, or if you didn't follow all the rules, you were like a pariah, and you still got shaken down for your tithe. But that's basically what it is today.
What's really scary though is they've got us in a position of lockdown already,
right?
And so they control the terms upon which we reopen. And of course, we never had to lock down in the first place.
Of course not.
We capitulated to that. We went along with it because we bought a certain bill of goods about the virus and what they got everybody to. They got those that matter, in large part to basically believe that they're doing a good thing to themselves and everybody else by capitulating to it. And now we're in a position of no leverage whatsoever, and so, another anecdote, speaking to a potential customer who is in the southern part of the country, and making small talk. Are you back in the office yet? Work from home? No. We hope to be going back into the office. I can't wait for that, which is why I can't wait for the vaccine, because it's going to be required. And so now that's the new reality we have. It's not just social distance for a couple weeks. Now you're going to have to get the vaccine to just go to work, to travel on an airplane. It's incredible how
it's bio-Leninist tyranny.
Yeah.
Okay. That's all that is.
This is the fight of our lives. Yeah. I mean, it really is. And I want to play a clip, actually, from the Telegram.
Oh man,
so much good stuff in here.
Great stuff on the Telegram. Join.
But this guy from Canada, I guess he was flying back into the country, and he went beast mode.
Beast mode. See, this is a good example.
Bags, and we're gonna go outside. We're gonna refuse their stupid test, and tell everybody to refuse their stupid test. So, yeah. Hi. Yes, because I have a medical condition, so I don't need to wear one. And I'm also a Canadian citizen, and this is a violation of our Charter Rights, Section 6, and a violation of the Emergency Act 14.1. So I'm going to be declining your test today. Thank you very much. No problem. I'll happily do that. Everybody in here, if you are a Canadian citizen, simply deny the test, deny their quarantine, and there's nothing you can do. They cannot stop you. They cannot force you. You are a citizen. You have rights. If you want to wait in the line for 2 hours, let them put shit up your nose. Go right ahead. But if you have a brain and you have balls, just say no. That's fine. I have a camera on as well. So yes, everybody, this is what you do. You say no to their test, no to their quarantine, and if you're a citizen or a permanent resident, there's absolutely nothing they can do but acknowledge that you have rights, and they have to respect that. Is that not true? Say it's true for the camera, everybody. Say it's true.
So you have some identification?
I do, of course. That's not a problem.
You refuse to take the test?
I refuse to take your test 1,000,000%.
No problem.
And everybody in here, Canadian citizens, you can refuse the test. Just say no. Don't wait in line, and there's nothing they can do. Okay, I will not yell. That's true. But I just want you guys to acknowledge for 91,000 people watching that anybody can refuse the test.
Yeah, just give me your identification.
Perfect. Thank you. You guys hear that? Straight from the horse's mouth, straight from the police. Refuse the test. Ooh, I'm getting a ticket. Oh, not another one of those tickets. You know, tell everybody how many people have been convicted of those tickets in Canada. Answer? 0. How many people have been charged? Thousands. How many people convicted? 0. Why? It's a violation of our charter rights. So when that ticket goes to court, they throw it the fuck out. It's that simple. So I'm waiting for my little fine. Thanks, guys. I just want everybody to acknowledge that this is perfectly legal, perfectly acceptable. Thank you.
Oh, I know a lot of people think he's so impolite, but you know what?
Oh no!
You know what's
my feathers.
You know what's impolite is capitulating.
A medicalized police state is impolite. Okay.
Yeah. Well, you know what's interesting is he came on InfoWars, and he is on house arrest essentially, because he said they have a trial against him, and basically he's not allowed to leave his house because they'll arrest him if he does.
Wow.
And it's just like, wow, this is what we've come to. Because he didn't want to wear a mask and he didn't want to take a COVID test.
Well, I mean, you know, there is a U.S. title code. I think it's in title code 17 subsection. And it's about, you can't deprive people of their rights with color of law. And all this stuff is color of law. It's not real legislative. It's not signed into law. Executive orders are just decrees. At most, they can just fine you. At the most, you can't arrest someone for violating a edict. It's not a law. So, if anything, people are cowed into capitulating because they don't want to ruffle feathers. The main thing is, I don't want people to think that I don't care about them.
Right.
Well, you know,
but
I mean,
to what end? They're taking anal swab tests now in China.
Uh-huh.
But you know, the CDC announced quickly after Biden got in, you know, that TSA has arrest powers now, and you got to wear now they're specifying the mask. And we talked about this before. It's like you can see it on their face on the when they tell you to wear a mask, but it can be any kind of mask. The next step is a certain kind of mask, and if they can get you to just go there, then what else are you gonna?
Well, soon it's going to be admitted, like, the mask doesn't actually prevent airborne viral transmission. So it
2 times 0 is 0.
Because it's in the air, everyone's got to crawl around on the ground if they want to do anything.
Right.
So if you go to the grocery store, you got to crawl on the ground because the virus doesn't live that low near the ground.
And if you don't like it, you're going to have a struggle session.
Right. Well, yeah, we've supplied clips of that on the Telegram of employees and other customers in stores just like going berserk on people who are trying to keep their social distance, but want to breathe freely without an impediment on their face.
Like this guy.
Oh yeah, this guy. Welcome to Compassionate Mask Wearing America. Okay. This is precisely the kind of country everyone needs to live in. Remember, it's all for your safety.
We're going to remove your hands from my trusted persons now. You're fucking Washington. Get your hands off of me. Get your fucking hands off of me.
Oh my God.
Get your hands off of me. Get your fucking hands off of me.
Canada again. What's going on in Canada? Oh my God. Jude.
I can't breathe. I can't breathe. I can't breathe. You're choking me. Somebody film this, please. Film this. They're assaulting me.
Look at these Nellies.
You guys aren't the police.
He's one guy. It's got 3 guys. Man, he should have been carrying a gun. Because he wasn't wearing a mask?
Yeah.
Dude. Okay. This is how it's going to be with the vaccine. Because in Israel, they are they're allowing name sharing for those who don't have it. That has to be reported, and then the government's going to like create a list.
Well, whatever happens in Israel is
that's the beta for
it's the beta for the United States.
Because we're betas.
That's right. Israel is, totally authority cucked the entire nation. Look at Biden's cabinet appointments.
Yo, what about that? We got to play that rap they did about the vaccination.
Oh, man.
Do you know what to search for that?
Let's see. I'm trying to remember if that was on the Instagram or the
community immunity. I got it right here.
Oh, you got it. Nice.
All right. So this is Run DMC.
Wow.
And I mean, there is something true about this statement that the elite hate black people.
Yeah.
I do think the eugenics cult, it really, at the end of the day, they don't really care about your skin color. But they have targeted black families. I mean,
before, and they continue to. I mean,
they've experimented on them. They happen to be black. I don't know if it's because they were black that I can't. unless they say so, and some do, right? And say very nasty, evil things about black people. But this is just unreal. To me, it shows the predatory and nature of the vaccine program
and the condescending, patronizing attitude that's projected to who they think really needs it, who really needs the jab.
Well, yeah, I think we talked about like the rollout, and they talked about essential workers and vulnerable populations get it first. And it's like, so unreal. The revelation of the method.
You got the vaccine, they got the vaccine, we got the vaccine. We can get back to normal, let me inform you, let's all get the vaccine. It's about community immunity. I'm talking unity for you and me. If Doc says it's good, then trust me, it's good. Now let's all get the vaccine. Alright, there is none higher. DMC, I will inspire. Time for us to trust and not debate. The vaccine, believe it's safe to take. 9 out of 10 people won't get sick. That's 90% effective and legit. This COVID thing is real and it will find you. It's killing our people, let me remind you. Back in the days, there was polio, smallpox, back in the days. Measles and mumps, man, back in the days. But because of the vaccines, none of those saved. Vaccines, they work to trigger immunity. 2 shots, we got antibody security. We gotta act now, no need to wait. Get your vaccine before it's too late, for real.
For real, man, they really dumb it down.
So patronizing.
It's so patronizing and insulting, and it over.
Let's not debate. Just trust. If Doc says it's okay, it's all good, baby.
It's legit.
It's legit.
Jeez.
I mean, just
and the caricature of this black man.
That is in itself.
And it says, did you see the little logo in the bottom? It said, look at this, hip hop public health down there.
Wow. And it looks like a little symbol of like the solar system.
Right. Or maybe a proton
or
an electron.
The atoms, nuclear theory.
Just vaguely scientific.
Vaguely, yeah.
And yet all the handwriting is like graffiti. So again,
gosh.
look, we got street cred because it looks like graffiti, which is probably a racist caricature.
Well, and the insinuation is everyone needs to stay under house arrest with their masks on in their house. Do you see these depictions?
And
90% for, I mean, they're using this 90-90-90 thing, which
look, everybody's in there. And I've seen these pictures.
Look at this.
Remember during the peak of the pandemic last year, these pictures of people like waving at each other in their buildings because they couldn't go
across the street.
Yeah. God. They couldn't open the door. And we'll go back to normal.
Yeah.
How much have we heard that these tropisms that they create and repeat until it manifests?
Well, see, the thing is, back to normal. You mean back to early 2020, late 2019? Okay, because what was normal back then was recognizing the pedocracy. They don't want that. They don't want people to go back to normal because then there would be huge international protests around government corruption and trafficking, and because that was the normal back then.
Right.
Oh, so the new normal is don't do that. Follow what we say. And we're going to lead you down a rabbit hole of medical tyranny that does not end. It doesn't end. There's no end to it. So the thing is, people have to find ways of just openly creating parallel societies that defy.
Yeah.
That's really, you have to create a parallel society.
Well, actually, network. We've been looking for some activities for our kids to go to, and like some sort of day program. And I've been shocked to see already the regulation of vaccines. It's maybe I took it for granted growing up because I was given some, and that was just the normal thing. as a matter of now deserves further investigation. Almost everybody seems to ask for forms. Okay, well, what if there are no forms to provide? Am I barred access here from a certain segment of it? Seems like that, and even the pediatricians are saying the idea of exemptions, that's going to be sort of post-COVID, because now we're in this new situation. It's like, but even the pediatrician, it's like, you know the numbers. You're not totally stupid. Like, this isn't a big deal, and they admit that. They admit it's not any worse than a seasonal flu.
Right.
But yet we're going to go to these. We're just going to capitulate to all these extreme measures and all these precedents having an exemption, religious or otherwise, or medical for. I mean, medical. That's just not a conversation. Oh, it's going to be a conversation.
Oh, sure.
And that's where, you know, we get into a real debate for, you know, about the battle for our freedom, you know, and because there are still, as dark as it seems, a lot of people who just aren't going to do it, like you said. So it's a de facto parallel society. I think those people just have to organize themselves, because this is very
increasingly difficult, and they've made it increasingly difficult because they adapted and improved upon the control of information from the AIDS saga. Back then, there were enough voices of dissent that could still get their word in edgewise, and people could still publicly gather to hear contrasting critical information.
Right.
And they've updated that big time with all of the SOCMED, 1984 shutdown of dissenting voices. And that in itself shows you that it's fraud. If they can't accept contrarian data and evidence that shows that it's an absurdity, that it needs to be dropped immediately, and they just rule it out of the equation entirely and prevent it from ever getting in edgewise on a large scale level, because they can, prevent assembly with this whole pretext. They can, cry wolf around public health.
Hey,
and it's just it's a sophisticated approach to shutting down people's need to hear contrasting information, which is why we're shadow banned so maliciously.
Absolutely. A good example of that, another personal anecdote, was the
Milgram shock experiment.
My wife had a bad experience at a nail salon. She wanted to get pedicure, manicure, and she didn't want to wear a mask.
Right. So
she wore one of these ridiculous looking face shields, which is allowed at Costco, etc. The dude rudely basically tossed a mask at her, on the counter, after she already told him that she can't wear a mask, won't wear a mask, and will be happy to wear this, to pay you money to keep your business up. But it's like, I don't know what this guy was on, but anyways, she just turned and took her money elsewhere. So I wanted her to have a mani-pedi experience that was not mask heavy pressure.
Right.
And that's kind of to your point about parallel economies.
That's right.
But the problem, to your exact point, is to find somebody who would do that service without, being an asshole about it. I went on to Nextdoor.
Yep.
And made a post and said, if you know anyone who will do this and is reputable or whatever, send me a DM. Don't bother posting it publicly. I know, if you don't know somebody with that service, you shouldn't say anything. Just move on. I'm not bothering you by seeking out a maskless mani-pedi for my wife, but I did get some DMs, people hey, call this person, they'll hook you up or whatever. I feel you, that kind of thing. But all the public comments were, you knew what you were doing when you posted this, and you need to mask up, you know, blah, blah, blah. I can't believe people act like this, talking about me, like, oh, how dare I? And, you know, really saying nasty things about my wife. Oh, she's so self-interested. She's so selfish, you know, wanting to, you know, put someone at risk just because she doesn't want to wear a mask. And it's like, this is the psychology. Yeah. And the punchline to this story is that my post got censored by Nextdoor.
Probably got deleted.
It did. It got, you know, and people were even commenting sort of like, you know, in before the delete. And it's just like, oh, you know, they're all reporting this.
Right.
And then they're taking an action there. And it's exactly to your point that they are inhibiting our ability to organize and have meetings of the minds, which are in opposition to the obviously increasingly draconian restrictions and threats on your life. I'm saying people are getting hurt now.
And even with them, my own family, one of my family members, you know, works at a law firm, and one of the head partners got one test that said that he had the boogie bug. And, you know, he probably wears some sort of mask hours and hours a day. And he said, well, I guess that makes sense because I've lost some of my sense of smell and taste. I was like, and then so she told me this information. I was like, well, how many tests has he taken? Oh, just one. I was like, well, you should probably just get like 5 other ones and see what the ratio is.
Right.
Because, you know, there's like a, you know, 80+% false positive. You know, nothing. And then it's
crickets.
Like crickets. And she's like, oh, well, he did say that he didn't have smell or taste. I was like, well, how often do you wear a mask? I guess most of the day. Like, every day.
Duh! What are you smelling? Your own air in the mask. Yeah. My God.
It's like that's gonna mess with your olfactory and taste sense. It just
your smell and taste are connected. Duh. So if you're not smelling anything because you're wearing a mask, no fucking
it's
shit.
gonna atrophy. The sense is gonna atrophy.
Exactly.
And it was just like crickets after that.
You're an asshole.
You're an asshole.
You're a miscreant.
You're a miscreant for obviating the obvious.
Yeah, that's absolutely true.
So miscreant. I mean, miscreantism needs to go exponential. People need to be hardcore infidels against this, because it's well, of course, false religion, but it's a thanatoid religion. It's a death-based, fear-based, misanthropic one. Which at least you could give some credit to the old world religions of it being about some kind of empowerment of the human spirit. That exists in almost every single religion.
Absolutely.
So that's like, you know, the giant pneumatological or philosophical sort of carrot is, oh, if you follow our rules, you'll be a better person. This is almost the opposite. It's, if you don't follow our rules, you are filth.
Right.
You are the scum of the earth. You don't care about anybody. You might as well just be called. Now, if you go along with the program, you still might be called. But at least people will, you know, give you the time of day if you're following all of the orthodox rules and regulations that we put forward. At least you're not a miscreant, you know. And, you know, if you thought that religious intolerance was, you know, aggressive for infidels back then, you'd be right. But the longer this goes on and the more it becomes a cultural edifice that people just perpetuate,
right,
the more it literally
there.
It's and you know, I was even looking around. I have a picture on my phone. All of the masks now have to say fashion mask because there's no medical basis for wearing it. That's been admitted.
Right.
So now it's simply a virtue signal. It's simply a genuflection before the altar of, oh, I don't want to make people think that I don't care about them. And that's the reason why I think a lot of intelligent people still wear masks. It's this force majeure of, I see that people are really afraid of this. There's not really a reason to be afraid of it, but I don't want to get people to be aggressive and put me in a chokehold in the grocery store.
Right. Well, I think people just, we talk a lot about the priesthood of the sciences and academics and the medical white coatism.
Right.
It's very rare that somebody doesn't give some credence to what the medical professionals are saying. They might not want to wear a mask in a grocery store, but they'll still say, well, I can understand for surgeons, who are doing surgery, that it will be efficacious at preventing an infectious disease. And it's like, again, you believe that because you were told that.
Right.
You don't actually, when people say stuff like that, they don't actually know.
No.
And on that note, there's this study about post-operative wound infections and surgical face masks.
Right.
That was done, I think, in the 90s, 92. And their abstract says it's never been shown that wearing surgical face masks decreases post-operative wound infections. On the contrary, a 50% decrease has been reported after omitting face masks.
Wow.
The present study was designed to reveal any 30% or greater difference in general surgery wound infection rates by using face masks or not. During 115 weeks, a total of 3,088 patients were included in the study. That's a lot.
That's pretty substantial.
Weeks were denoted as masked or unmasked according to a random list. After 1,537 operations performed with face masks, 73 or 4.7% wound infections were recorded.
Wow.
And after 1,551 operations performed without face masks, 3.5% or 55 infections occurred.
Ooh.
This difference was not statistically significant, and the bacterial species cultured from the wound infections did not differ in any way, which would have supported the fact that the numerical difference was a statistically missed difference. These results indicated that the use of face masks might be reconsidered. Masks may be used to protect the operating team from drops of infected blood and from airborne infections, but have not been proven to protect the patient operated by a healthy operating team.
Sure.
So if you're healthy,
pretty commonsensical.
Exactly, and would align with
real science.
Yeah, exactly. But now,
right?
Where's my boy? Oh, that's not what I wanted at all. Gravy Davy Bear, check him out on Instagram.
Oh, I love this. Little
So what is he? Is he protected? Man,
well,
that looks super dangerous.
Oh, it
by
looks
the way.
so dangerous. Well, and it's kind of like one of those awkward situations, like in Curb Your Enthusiasm, where it's like, man, I really got to take off all this crap and wipe my glasses. I can't see shit.
Unbelievable.
Oh, that's a real gem.
But what about
that's a funny one?
What about not one more death from COVID? When the politicians say not one more death, that means there's a fucking, it's like, with gun violence, not one more death, meaning we're coming to take your guns. Like,
right.
No shit, Sherlock. Do not resuscitate orders imposed on COVID-19 patients with learning difficulties.
Ooh.
I think this goes hand in hand with like the defunding of police, the defunding of hospitals, and all this money is being diverted to kill people and hurt them. But meanwhile, like murders are going uninvestigated completely.
Mm-hmm.
Like you just see a rise in homicide across the board, and they don't have the resources to even focus on it because they're not paid to do that. They're paid to, enforce mask orders and henpeck local businesses and revenue generate by pulling people over.
That's right.
Literally parasitism writ large.
Well, and it's now demonstrable. We have nearly a year's worth of evidence now that the effects, the negative social, economic, psychological effects of the stress associated with all the lockdowns far exceeds the death count, supposedly.
Oh, yeah.
That we know is
Here
inflated.
we go. The science is settled. Lockdowns are more deadly than the virus, and masks don't work. So look at suicidal thoughts.
Boom!
Increase from 10.7% in young adults to 25.5% by August 2020. Alcohol consumption.
Huge.
Monthly overdoses. It's actually increasing. So between February and March, it went up 2%. Between March and April, it went up 11%. And then from April to May,
13%.
So it's actually growing in the growth rate between each month. According to the UN, there are 10,000 additional children dying a month during the lockdowns and 550,000 additional children suffering malnutrition. There will also be 1.4 million additional people to die from untreated tuberculosis. And, is it because the beds are full of COVID patients?
No,
it's not.
They've got plenty of time to do the Macarena.
Is what I'm saying. It goes part and parcel to the Great Reset, the economic austerity, but it's not actually, it's not like they're actually being honest about it. It's not like they're saying, hey, we spent your Social Security money a long time ago. That money has been long since, cashed out.
And even if it was still around, we've devalued it 80% with all the money printing.
Oh, yeah. We'll give you your Social Security. It'll be on this digital vaccine that we give you.
Yeah.
And you can buy your government cheese and keep your lights on unless you're Texas.
Right.
In which case we're going to knock you with the
smart storm.
A smart storm.
Smart storm.
Yeah. With smart dust now.
Yeah. And it's just the techno dystopia doesn't really end. The more you go play along with it, the more it just ensnares you like a net. And that's the thing. It's like they've got most of the world economy over a barrel, and it's a hostage situation. This big pharma bio-Leninist tyranny is holding most of the world's economy hostage, and their conditions for not continuing to destroy people that they have control over, i.e. the economies, is to just play along by their rules. We set the rules. You cooperate. You don't have any independent thought. You go along with everything we say, and maybe you'll get a little bit of maybe something you might remember as normal for a little while, until, of course, we find another deadly pathogen. They already had musings of a Nipah virus from China again. It's amazing that they've completely, basically, there's a sense of normalcy in large parts of the world, including China now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, I also noticed that
we're being propagandized hard.
We're being propagandized so hard.
The ubiquity of the mask wearing is endemic of where this is all headed to me. Like the fact that I never see, except in certain interviews and talk show hosts, in general, if people are supposed to be in public, if it's public, everybody's wearing a mask. They don't let too many images go out unless it's in a pejorative sense, like that guy down in Texas who has a bunch of grocery stores, and Fox News reporting about how horrendous it was that these grocery stores allow people to shop without a mask. And that's what we're supposed to do is like gas, but it's like you're gaslighting me. Right. You're gaslighting me. But I guess some people do.
Well, again,
they've been trained to have a very visceral negative reaction to that, and that is the absolute success story of this propaganda. But when you think of all the resources they have, it's not surprising that they're able to control the narrative with all the technology and the advancements
and the multi-generational Bernaysian incrementalism around cooperating with authority and the depiction of success.
And they've hired scientists, real scientists, behavior scientists,
right,
and other to study us almost like a separate species.
That's right.
Right, and then psychiatry, right?
Mm-hmm.
How does the human mind work? How can we mold it? How can we control it? How can we, and that's what blows my mind, people's like obliviousness to how they're being told what to do. And it's like,
right,
I'm sorry, I'm an adult.
Right.
Some adult on the TV is going to in some distant room somewhere is going to tell me what to do. Are you fucking kidding me?
Right.
That's why these images of the man getting choked out because he's not wearing a mask. It's like, I just feel it's just like, I fortunately have had pretty minimal confrontations in public.
Right.
But I also don't go out that much.
I've reduced my public exposure,
and that hurts the economy.
That hurts the economy.
It does.
And also, it has embedded a kind of.
But it's not because I'm afraid of the virus, nor do I think
absolutely.
It's because of the new social situation that's out there.
Yeah, and
it's become antisocial.
The antisocial behaviorism has, it's reached a hyper Bernaysian level under this propaganda that we've been bombarded with day in and day out for about a year now, and just all the conflicting messages and everything that goes along with it. It's really it's kind of a twilight of freedom in general, in a way. And you know what they say, that night gets the darkest before the dawn. And again, all this new age programming around, the new dawn of the new world and dark winter, and it's all this, crypto-Jesuitical Masonic symbolism that they're using in a ritualistic fashion to feed these negative egregores that are, they love to feast on fear. And they're subtle body entities that these psychopathic elite are the pawns of.
Right.
They don't actually have a lot of the power. They're just compelled by their own perverse and demented proclivities to feed these negative egregores.
Well, speaking of that, I saw some interesting side-by-side images of Joe Biden, hologram Joe or sloppy Joe, from years ago, like his look from years ago compared to now. And it's like, is it the same person? Is there some sort of entity that possesses him? It seems
possible,
very, very probable. And then you combine, like we've been talking about, the virtualization of everything being digital. He's not even going to meet with another world leader in person for maybe 2 months, and it's like, oh, we know what this game is. Okay, we'll see where we're at the end of 2 months, and I'm sure COVID's going to be worse by then.
Sure.
Even if it's not, I'll just say that it is,
right?
So that whatever. Right. But is it the same guy? Is it even a real person that you could touch and feel, or is it an animation? I mean,
right.
I wonder that sometimes in this new environment, like how can you validate it? Can you even go to DC anymore? Could you see this guy in person?
Right.
Or is that not allowed anymore either?
Right. Oh no, you just have to believe Queen Kamala.
Mm-hmm.
She's got it under control.
Proto Hillary.
Yeah.
following in her footsteps, defending pedophiles.
That's
well,
right.
you know, yeah, we're getting to a state where, yeah, like as we opened with Miscreant, if you don't subscribe to the ideology, it's not just that you're, you know, not going to be invited to the dinner party. You're not going to be able to go to the grocery store, motherfucker. You're not going to be able to fly on an airplane, you know?
Right.
And I was sent this video. Should have posted it in the Telegram, but this kind of, to me, evidences that progression towards an intolerance of any alternative viewpoint. And, you know, these type people, they find their ways into public schools, and they become your teachers.
Yeah, and they get to be administrators and bureaucrats and people getting $300,000-$400,000 a year making policy of taxpayer dollars.
Believe that there is white privilege.
Have you heard this already?
Please don't teach. If that there is white privilege, please don't teach. If you don't believe that there is white privilege, please don't teach. If you don't believe that Black Lives Matter, please don't teach. If you don't believe in systemic racism and how it negatively impacts our students of color and don't want to help dismantle those systems, please don't teach. If you don't believe that there is white privilege, please don't teach.
So condescending, almost as condescending as that
community
immunity. Yeah,
If you don't
exactly.
believe in
We're
systemic
just gonna
racism
dumb
and how
it
it
down
negatively
to a
impacts our
little
students of color
jingo,
and don't want to help dismantle those systems, please
a little
don't
song,
teach.
and
the
that
irony
that
of it.
ends the conversation. And it's like, really? So if we don't agree with your little song, we don't have anything valid to contribute from an intellectual perspective, you know?
Well, and the irony is, it's the tune to, if you're happy and you know it, clap your hands. Is this woman happy thinking this stuff? I doubt it. I bet deep down she's probably miserable.
White privilege, please don't teach.
Or at least
If you
brainwashed.
don't believe that Black Lives Matter, please don't
The
teach.
irony of it, though.
If
It's
you
like,
don't believe in
it's
systemic
just a
racism and
mantra.
how it
It's just
negatively
a
impacts our
creed.
students
It's
of
just
color and don't want to
regurgitation.
help
It's
dismantle
literally
those systems,
not backed by
please
any
don't
data
teach.
whatsoever. It's not forensically verifiable. It's
believe
not.
that there is white
Everything
privilege,
that
please
she
don't
says
teach.
in that idiotic
If you
jingle
don't believe that Black
is
Lives Matter, please
debunkable
don't teach.
within a few
If you
minutes
don't believe in systemic
of
racism
addressing
and how
each
it
topic
negatively impacts our students of
by
color
obviating
and don't want to
statistical
help dismantle
errors
those
in
systems,
the
please don't
conclusions
teach.
of those statements.
But she put together a condescending song, and that ends the conversation.
That's so woke.
If you don't
She's
believe
so
that Black Lives Matter,
smart
please don't
to
teach.
have
If
syncopated
you
that
don't believe in systemic
incredibly
racism and how it negatively
social
impacts our
justice
students of color
oriented
and
message
don't want to help dismantle
in a
those
recognizable
systems,
jingle.
please
She
don't
must be
teach.
so smart.
You know, that's the implication of this, you know,
Believe that there is white privilege,
idiocy.
please don't teach. If you don't
And I
believe
mean,
that Black
the
Lives Matter,
Telegram
please
is
don't
just
teach.
like, it's like we still have like 20 posts that I want to get to. That's why it's so excellent. Just going back to the education aspect, though, all the way at the bottom, that one's a funny post about the new age hypocrisy. But this Pennsylvanian educator, she is detailing all the consequences of the outcome-based education that is part and parcel to the Common Core curriculum. And before it was, you know, advertised as Common Core, it was all about creating a attitude adjustment amongst all the children, so that it was less about knowing the difference between, you know, fact and fiction, and, you know, having an understanding of reality and how to analyze data and knowing the correct kind of math answer. That was this is back in '92, so it's almost 30 years ago. And even back then, it was all about, we have to create these perfect little collective human resource units that will just obey authority. And that was part and parcel to the curriculum, based on the assessments that were divvied out to all these students through all these districts in Pennsylvania, and it mirrored programs in, you know, dozens of other states. And it just went unchecked. It was just this hidden agenda, basically, this dumbing down agenda that was in the education system.
around creating a compliance worldview amongst these small, children, basically. And you internalize it, and if they didn't get the right attitude adjustment, if it didn't reflect in their behavior or their thinking process, then they would have to remediate them.
Mm-hmm.
They have to keep introducing the same concept over and over and over and over and over again until they just capitulated.
Yeah.
And
I was a subject of the public school system, and I intuitively experienced that. I mean, I observed it myself. I mean, I remember in middle school, they had a system of punishment or whatever, discipline, called the reflection and the stop sign.
Right.
And when you behaved in a way that they didn't like, that was your time to get a reflection. And a reflection meant you were punished by, being eliminated from an activity,
right,
or put somewhere that was punitive to you, and then you were asked to fill out a piece of paper about what happened.
That's right.
And what your feelings are and what you did wrong, and then you come back and you provide that reflection. Then
dude, I mean, that happened to me in a super alternative kind of hippie Waldorf school, honestly. I mean, I contested the history teacher in high school's interpretation of the Second Amendment and called her out on all of her, Marxist data.
That shouldn't count.
Yeah.
That should not be an opportunity for discipline.
I got banished from the class.
For an idea.
For vociferous disagreement.
So it's not like you tipped over the table during a science project maliciously, or were playing pencil break when you were supposed to be working on a project.
Oh no!
You just expressed the dissenting view.
Yeah,
and then you had to.
had
disciplinary action.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then I had it wasn't so much like a form fill out, but it was like a student teacher conference, just with me, and so it was like this kind of gang up effect where, do you see why we had to exclude you from the rest of the class?
Right.
It's like, the whole behavioral exam there is, can I be meek and mild and, feign remorse
and repeat what you're told?
Yeah.
Just repeat, parrot it. I remember it was post college. I had moved back home, and I had by that point discovered that we have a bunch of private families who run our central banking system. And I was thinking back on my schooling, and I wasn't really ever taught what a dollar was,
right,
what the history of it was, its relative importance to our political history, and I went through my U.S. history class, and that was not even a footnote, really.
Not at all.
I mean, I remember, now I wasn't the best student, but I know that it wasn't discussed. I paid enough attention to know that it really wasn't even a footnote. And so I went to my U.S. history teacher, he was still at the school teaching U.S. history, and I reconnected with him, and through conversation I was like, I have learned a lot about our history since I was in high school. Obviously, I would love to put together a presentation to the class to talk about the central bank, the Federal Reserve, because I don't remember that being covered. And that's not a criticism of you. It's just that I would have appreciated hearing some specific information. I would be happy to put it together and come into the class and share that with your class. And he got all uncomfortable and was like, he basically said I couldn't do that because I didn't have a teaching license. And I'm like, wow, what the fuck is that? I knew I had to have a driver's license, and I didn't pay enough attention in college to I wasn't really thinking about them getting their license to teach. and what that really meant. I knew that there were people on that track, to become teachers, but this licensure issue, it presents itself at very key junctures in life, driving, getting married, teaching, plumbing. It goes on and on and on, and we're all asking the government for the same thing, and that's permission to do a thing, which would otherwise be illegal. So teaching is licensed by the state. Well, aren't they going to have a vested interest in what gets taught?
Of course.
It's such a conflict of interest, and it's so obvious, and therefore you really have to be deluded to think that the government has your best interest at heart. Like the whole vaccine thing, right? We're still believing this idea that they want to protect you. The mask, that's for my protection. The teaching is for my benefit. It's all for me. Like, wow, how generous of the government. Like, yeah, nothing ever bad has ever come out. It's just so the level of naivete a person has to have.
That's right.
And then I was just like, wow, so this is a much bigger problem. Now, the central bank doesn't want me knowing about the central
existence.
Bank. Yeah, exactly. So it was just like a kind of, but now I'm a conspiracy theorist. I'm literally evolving into, at this stage of my life, I'm now evolving into a conspiracy theorist because I see two dots that are like, they have
side by side,
a line between them. Yeah. And I'm like, there's a line between
there's a connection.
There's a line between the dots, and they're like, you're connecting the dots. And I'm like, no, they're connected.
They're already connected.
I'm just like looking at it.
Right. Yeah. Well, and that's the thing is, pointing out real-time factual malfeasance, collusion,
that is so impolite,
and maleficence within the world authority
you're bad for pointing it out, but they're not bad for participating
that's right. That's right. And that's classic Stockholm syndrome amongst the masses. Right. To derogate and assault the messenger instead of listening to the message and investigating the actual nature of the crime that's being detailed.
Right.
Because again, it's the whole Nietzsche thing that people prefer the lie after a while. They become comfortable with it. Any kind of uncomfortable truth or inconvenient truth is just, it has been sort of co-opted by Al Gore, unfortunately, as a phrase. But the point remains, people prefer lies and illusions that make them comfortable.
That's why they go to the movies.
Right. And that's also why they watch the news in general, too. It's because there needs to be some sort of reality principle, even though it's a manufactured reality, even though it's really irreality. It still has to be reinforced and placated to. It has to be referenced and brought up over and over and over again as a basis for digestion within the desired mind, within the desired population. And that's why, Bernays is like such a skeleton key for a lot of this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It's because within the pseudo-scientific charlatanry matrix, they've employed all of the real occult behavioral psychological findings of Bernays from, much earlier, almost 100 years ago, over 100 years ago now. And so this past 100 plus years has been this massive behavioral modification paradigm away from individual resilience, competency, and self-determination,
and creativity
into docility, domestication, acquiescence, and fealty to a power that's essentially unseen but deemed, incontrovertible.
Right.
And that's been internalized on a multi-generational level at this point. And it is very hard to reverse it. it really is honestly up to the individual to a great extent to sort of muster the internal psychological fortitude to examine all of the misconceptions that are constantly floating around in their day-to-day mentions or day-to-day terms. And this is kind of a sticking point with all this lockdown and quarantining and you know, just antisocial behavior that operates under the pretext of, you know, public health, is it's really infected people's desire to even want to relate at all in person. It's like people have their little, you know, echo chamber pods of people that they deem worthy enough based on, you know, the kind of perspectives they just want to hear echoed back and forth to each other. Because it used to be that even just a couple of years ago, people prided themselves on having a lot of different friends with a lot of different perspectives.
Right.
A real diversity of opinion. And that's been diluted down to, oh, I've got to count on my hand how many people who are my friends that don't look like me. I've got to count on my hand of how many people think the same as me. And that's it, to a great extent. A lot of people have just kind of shut down, wanting to engage with anyone who might have a competent ability to rattle their cage a little bit.
Well, they engineer that in a way by enforcing diversity standards in the workplace hiring arena.
That's right.
You know what I mean? Like, you see this ramping up now too with, we're going to have the most diverse cabinet ever. You know, I got a woman vice president and I got a trans health secretary and all that good stuff.
And then I have chosen for the rest of the.
But they do that. They do that in federal employment law.
Yeah.
You know, at a certain company size, you really become sort of, you know, penalized.
Right.
For
not following the template.
Not following the template, which, you know, socially, you know, people get into that, you know, guilt by association sort of mindset too. And like you're saying, they become very tribal. And now that, you know, you've got a serving capacity at your restaurant, well, you've now got a friend capacity. You're just gonna have to cut some people out.
Right.
Maybe you even have to cut your family out depending on their viewpoints. And we saw the celebration of that happening during the holidays, like, you know, certain figures saying, you remember that uncle?
Right.
You know, you don't like hearing for an hour, you know, during Christmas time. Well, now this year, now's your chance. You don't have to.
Yeah, he just put on your headphones, keep your mask on, and he's now canceled. You know, same thing with that friend that has all those wild out there ideas and is, you know, maybe like super creative and inspiring, but, you know, maybe he's a little bit of a miscreant. A little bit of a miscreant. We can't have him around anymore. We can't associate with him because then maybe we would be thought of as miscreants. You know, that's the sort of dumbing down effect that, again, goes back to the education of conformity, collectivism, and compliance. And, you know, the extent to which that has been internalized by people is reflected in the ease with which they can just cancel people. With the ease with which they can just write people
that
off.
is very 1984.
Yes.
How they give us this illusion of diversity in the platforms, right? You can go to your Instagram or the Twitter or YouTube, blah blah blah. You're at the end of the day, you're still just digitizing your own identity, and not only is it a surveillance grid, you know, but it's an input output. You know, it's not just you putting in. You're the product, and it's underappreciated, I think, that aspect of it.
And that's the thing about the techno dystopia is eventually we're going to outsource intimacy to the screen. We're going to outsource friendship.
Well, I heard Steve Quayle on Alex Jones, and he's like, you know, that's the siliconized future. You know, we're not only putting ourselves on silicon chips, and, you know, even Microsoft has patented some technology to supposedly, you know, collate all of your information from the infosphere, and distill it into a chat bot that's supposed to represent your personality that you can chat with even after you die. That's technology. But he also talks about the sex dolls and the sex robots.
Sure.
And have to agree. I mean, if they can cut off that human connection, and they are saying in some places, you got to wear a mask when you masturbate. You got to wear a mask. It's like, what the fuck? Are you? You got to wear a mask when you have sex.
Yeah, you might as well wear it while you take a shower and sleep too.
Yeah, there was another picture on Instagram of someone giving a swim lesson, and they're wearing masks. Look at this.
Oh my god. Oh yeah.
So it's next level.
And it is true that, I mean, I have a couple people who I do still try to keep up with and, remain cordial with, but, they're double and triple masking.
Triple masking,
bro.
Well, where does it stop?
It stops at suicide and suffocation is what it stops.
Yo,
right? I mean, it's like, why not 10 masks? Why not just asphyxiate yourself wherever you go?
How about genital mutilation? Have you heard Rand Paul questioning the supposed health secretary to be?
Oh man,
have you heard this? Dude, it's good shit.
The United Universe.
This is, I think I did see this one actually.
Genital mutilation.
He occasionally brings up some good stuff. This is one example.
Well, he's coming from, I'm a doctor.
Right.
Pretty admirable here. Check it out.
Yeah.
Genital mutilation has been nearly universally condemned. Genital mutilation has been condemned by the WHO, the United Nations Children's Fund, the United Nations Population Fund. According to the WHO, genital mutilation is recognized internationally as a violation of human rights. Genital mutilation is considered particularly egregious because, as the WHO notes, it is nearly always carried out on minors and is a violation of the rights of children. Most genital mutilation is not typically performed by force, but as WHO notes, that by social convention, social norm, the social pressure to conform, to do what others do and have been doing, as well as the need to be accepted socially and the fear of being rejected by the community. American culture is now normalizing the idea that minors can be given hormones to prevent their biological development of their secondary sexual characteristics. Dr. Levine, you have supported both allowing minors to be given hormone blockers to prevent them from going through puberty, as well as surgical destruction of a minor's genitalia. Like surgical mutilation, hormonal interruption of puberty can permanently alter and prevent secondary sexual characteristics. The American College of Pediatricians reports that 80 to 95% of prepubertal children with gender dysphoria will experience resolution by late adolescence if not exposed to medical intervention and social affirmation. Dr. Levine, do you believe that minors are capable of making such a life-changing decision as changing one's sex?
Well, Senator, thank you for your interest in this question. Transgender medicine is a very complex and nuanced field with robust research and standards of care that have been developed. And if I am fortunate enough to be confirmed as the Assistant Secretary of Health, I would look forward to working with you and your office and coming to your office and discussing the particulars of the standards of care for transgender medicine.
The specific question was about minors. Let's be a little more specific since you evaded the question. Do you support the government intervening to override the parent's consent to give a child puberty blockers, cross-sex hormones, and/or amputation surgery of breasts and genitalia? You have said that you're willing to accelerate the protocols for street kids. I'm alarmed that poor kids with no parents who are homeless and distraught you would just go through this and allow that to happen to a minor. I would hope that you would have compassion for Kira Bell, who's a 23-year-old girl who was confused with her identity. At 14, she read on the internet about something about transsexual. She thought, well, maybe that's what I am. She ended up getting these puberty blockers, cross-sex hormones. She had her breasts amputated. But here's what ultimately she says now. And this is a very insightful decision from someone who made a mistake but was led to believe this was a good thing by the medical community. I made a brash decision as a teenager, as a lot of teenagers do, trying to find confidence and happiness, except now the rest of my life will be negatively affected, she said, adding that the medicalized gender transitioning was a very temporary, superficial fix for a very complex identity issue. What I'm alarmed at is that you're not willing to say absolutely minors shouldn't be making decisions to amputate their breast or to amputate their genitalia. For most of our history, we believe that minors don't have full rights and the parents need to be involved. So I'm alarmed that you won't say with certainty that minors should not have the ability to make the decision to take hormones that will affect them for the rest of their life. Will you make a more firm decision on whether or not minors should be involved in these decisions?
Senator, transgender medicine is a very complex and nuanced field, and if confirmed to the position of Assistant Secretary of Health, I would certainly be pleased to come to your office and talk with you and your staff about the standards of care and the complexity of this field.
Yo, your face right now. God, your face. Transgender medicine? Is that different than medicine?
No, you mean
that's special?
Wow. Transgender medicine. That's a great euphemism for the Hirschfeldian mutilation cult that developed over 100 years ago, dude, in pre-Weimar Germany. The first quote-unquote successful transgender surgeries were over 105
Now, what
years
constitutes a successful transgender surgery?
A genital inversion.
And does that turn someone into a woman?
It's to give you it's to reverse your genitalia in a abominationist fashion.
Oh basically. My God. Well, there's a part 3 here. Actually, I haven't listened to this. Let's
let it go into the record that the witness refused to answer the question. The question is a very specific one. Should minors be making these momentous decisions? For most of the history of medicine, we wouldn't let you have a cut sewn up in the ER. But you're willing to let a minor take things that prevent their puberty, and you think they get that back? You give a woman testosterone enough that she grows a beard, you think she's going to go back looking like a woman when you stop the testosterone? You have permanently changed them. Infertility is another problem. None of these drugs have been approved for this. They're all being used off-label. I find it ironic that the left that went nuts over hydroxychloroquine being used possibly for COVID are not alarmed that these hormones are being used off-label. There's no long-term studies. We don't know what happens to them. We do know that there are dozens and dozens of people who've been through this who regret that this happened and a permanent change happened to them. And, you know, if you've ever been around children, 14-year-olds can't make this decision. In the gender dysphoria clinic in England, 10% of the kids are between the ages of 3 and 10. We should be outraged that someone's talking to a 3-year-old about changing their sex.
Yeah.
I can't vote for you if you can't make a decision.
Thank you so much, Senator Paul. Senator Levine, thank you for answering the question.
She didn't. He didn't answer the question.
It didn't answer the question. Okay.
It blows my mind that
basically that what she gave was a canned response that behind it was the venom of, "Don't you dare keep pressing me on this question, you evil cis white hetero bastard. I'm gonna kill you."
Right.
You know what I mean? That was the energy behind her response, even though it was, "Oh, it's a very complex and nuanced thing, and we don't, you know." But beneath it was, "Yeah, I'm gonna come to your office and kill you."
Yeah, or mutilate you, you know.
You afraid of puberty?
But no, there was basically like, if I'm confirmed, more like when I'm confirmed,
right?
Because I've got this one, you know, bagged up with my, deep state handlers. I'm going to come to the office and tell you we're doing this.
Pretty much.
And it'll be nuanced in that you can't do anything about it.
Right.
That's the nuance behind the transgender medicine, because they're already doing it in some places. I mean, hell, abortion, abortion, flesh industry, human trafficking. Yo, my homie over here riding shotgun sent me a link. The Olympic coach, the gymnastics 2012 gold medalist, who he was charged for human trafficking, killed himself, supposedly. Supposedly. Ruled a suicide, died by suicide.
I wonder what information he knew.
Yeah, because that doctor, I think his name's Nassar or something like that, Larry Nassar, he was the doctor who was taking care of the girls when they got hurt. You sprained your ankle.
Let me
gotta
give you
check
a
your
vaginal
vagina
exam
with my penis.
Right. Horrific. And you know, the thing that really should be warned about around this topic is the emergence of children's sexual rights. That's what this person is, the health secretary. That's what she represents in the kind of agenda, the Hirschfeldian agenda that they want to roll in. Is, oh, well, you know, maybe you've got a case that children don't have full adult consent capabilities before they're 18, but they can assent. They can proclaim their need to do something, and you're helping them if you help them to do that.
Yo, BBC, I saw a BBC special on gestation, right? And the first part of it, they kind of, call out the miracle that it is, and how unique it is. But then the second part of the segment is about these new kinds of parents that are out there who are sign languaging to their babies, and the babies are sign languaging back, and this has all been mapped out. We know what they're saying, and they're saying, I was born a boy, but I'm really a girl. And it's like,
oh Lord.
And they're like Rand Paul said, in England, 10% of these, either hormone blocking or surgeries are for kids between 3 and 10. He's like, have you ever been around children? It's like,
no.
Rand just wants it on the record that he was a senator and he didn't let that go unsaid.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Just let it be known. I'm Rand Paul. We don't allow this to happen to children.
Right.
I mean, I think you can kind of hear it in his voice. He's not trying to raise it too high. Because really, if you're going to have a real reaction, you flip the tables.
Right. That's right.
And that's why it's ludicrous to call what happened on January 6th an insurrection, because y'all got to go through with your process.
Right.
You fucking installed Biden, and now we've got this freak show.
Right. Something.
Devil.
Right. And is it... Am I wrong in thinking that that's a Pritzker? Is she a Pritzker?
I'm not familiar with that vernacular.
Well, the Pritzkers, like the multi-billion-dollar pharmaceutical giants, they do have a transgender streak within their family dynasty. And I'm trying to remember the name of this new health secretary.
Pritzker family. American family engaged in entrepreneurship and philanthropy. One of the wealthiest families in the United States of America. They're always into philanthropy.
Yeah, and they're always...
They give so much.
And they're always chosen, too, typically. Or commonly. Disproportionately chosen.
Like when the Rockefellers got into politics?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure that was a fair race.
Definitely fair there. And is it true that... Is the current health secretary I want to say
she's like he's trying to get confirmed. That's
Health and Human Services.
Rachel Levine.
Okay, but what was his original name? That's the real question. Born as... do they not give the original birth name? Once Rachel Levine, always Rachel Levine. Uh-huh.
Richard Levine.
Oh, Richard Levine. See, I would be very surprised if Richard, aka Rachel, didn't have some relation to the Pritzker governor from Chicago in some way, shape, or form. Because there's another example right there.
There's Jennifer. Formerly James Pritzker.
Originally James, right. So, and this is a trend. And this trend within the elite goes back a long time, but the most recent iteration of it in pre-Weimar and into Weimar Germany was the Hirschfeldian. He's the one that came out with the idea of gender fluidity. He's the one that came out with this notion of, there could be 40 different genders. He's the one that came out with all these sub-classifications of pedophilia that weren't pedophilia, but it was still attraction to minors. Yeah. This guy.
Magnus Hirschfeld was a German physician and sexologist educated primarily in Germany. Based his practice in Berlin, Charlottenburg. Outspoken advocate for sexual minorities.
He founded the Scientific Humanitarian Committee. Oh, how innocuous.
The first advocacy for homosexual and transgender rights. I'm sure he was real popular in Germany.
Yeah, and in fact, a lot of the hip neo-Marxist of the 60s were frequenters, like Max Horkheimer out of the critical theory school, the Frankfurt School. Some of these, neo-Marxists that came over to America just loved that institute there in their early 20s. Makes you wonder what they did there before they, spread their pearls of wisdom to the American youth.
What do you think about the paradox of, you can identify as and transition to a different gender, but if you are a white girl and you want to wear cornrows, you're not even claiming to be black, but you can't even do that.
Right.
Because that's culturally appropriating.
But wait a second.
But what if I identify as a black woman? Can I do that?
Oh, no, because that's... Wait a second. I thought that race was a social construct. And I thought that sex was a biological reality.
No, you got it backwards.
Oh, we got to flip it around now.
Interesting.
Well, it's a double standard. You have to have it both ways.
It's an inversion, just like the transgender medicine of inverting your genitals.
Exactly. It's got to be both and, right? So, race has to both be a biological reality and a social construct at the same time. It's like gravity. It's an umbrella concept. It contracts and expands for whatever circumstance in which you want to use it against whatever population selectively you want to employ it against. So, same thing with orientation. It has to be a biological reality and a social construct simultaneously. And so that's why you can get away with, derogating white men as cis hetero, right? Within the whole transgender paradox. That's basically signaling that, you identify with your biological sex. That's, plebeian. That's evil. But if you really understood the enlightenment of, that there's fluidity and that you can transition to whatever you want.
Gender neutral and, this new definition of queer. It's interesting. I just read a kid's book and they use queer in it, and it was a very different definition. in the context of this book about a train named Tootle.
Right.
This is like for a 3 or 4 year old. It's a very different. So I talked to some queers before, and it's like they can't even explain it.
Not really, because they're intimidated because you don't have the purple hair and you're not wearing the tight jeans, and a lot of it was about social reinforcement. So if people can reflect back at each other in a consensus and an agreement, they can talk about it all day very openly and very easily. But the second that they identify you as an outsider, it's just like the whole mask effect at the park. You know, people maybe playing with their kids at a play structure without their mask on, but the second there's a stranger, you gotta put the mask on, right? It's a similar kind of Milgram shock experiment sort of reaction, because you don't identify like they do, so therefore they can't really explain it to you. You wouldn't get it, cis hetero, even though the second you try to eavesdrop or kind of overhear a conversation between two people who actually do identify similarly, they're still speaking the same gobbledygook. They're just speaking it more enthusiastically.
Yeah, it's like
at each other, reflecting it back to one another.
Right. That's true. I think a question is a lot more powerful than a statement, and while that may be true, they have perceived me a certain way, and I say they, I'm talking about one individual person when I provide this anecdote, but yet they call themselves they, so it's actually they might actually
it's confusing.
Yeah, it is
deliberately,
but
yeah,
I am also talking about what I do think is a group of people,
right?
Because they would identify themselves. At this time, I was seeing posters LGBTQIA, but I've seen some with a plus now.
Right.
So that was so long ago. It was like a year or two. So no, it was longer than that. So they've definitely maybe added some. Anyways, talking to this individual, and I'm just trying to understand. Well, first of all, I don't even really remember how it came up. Obviously, I had to bring it up that they were queer and gender non-binary, and that was like the first time I'd ever heard of it. I hadn't even encountered it on the internet. That was I was at a bar, and it was a real life conversation, and I was just like, oh, okay, I'm not even trying to be an asshole. Like, well, what does that mean? And this person was like, well, I'm not male or female, I'm not homosexual, heterosexual, or asexual. And I'm like, okay. And I'm like, but so what does that really mean for you? And she's like, well, that's something I'm still working out. And I'm just like, so then, I didn't say this at the time, but I'm thinking it, well, then why are we even talking about this?
Right.
Like, we're at the bar. Like, aren't there other things to be talking about? That we're talking about you. Don't you have something else going on to be talking about? It was just like very weird. I was supposed to adopt all this lingo, and it was very much a worlds collide, like, because I hadn't ever heard of it. And I was naively asking these questions, which, maybe she had never been asked before.
Possibly.
But that's like kind of the basis of like a real talk therapy, right? It's just like asking
questions,
trying to understand and reveal to the self. And I wasn't like trying to give any therapy or anything. It just like seemed to dawn on her that nobody had ever asked. So she's kind of caught off guard by the question.
Right.
And it's like, well, if you have this grand ideology that's upending all these social institutions, blah, blah, blah.
And mores.
Shouldn't it be better thought out? Shouldn't you have at least like an elevator pitch, prepared on what all this is about?
Well, and the ones that do have that down, the elevator pitch down, it ends up being a kind of militant zealotry.
Like that lady
against people who just
if you don't
have
believe
questions.
in white privilege, don't teach.
Exactly.
If you don't believe in white privilege, don't teach.
blah 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 blah.
And I'm just going to repeat this forever until you capitulate to it, I guess, or allow me to take a position of power. I thought Biden said, or maybe there was an executive order, we're going to start directing companies to have a certain type of person at a certain, certain percentage of your leadership. Talk about fascism. I mean, that's just the new normal. COVID. We got to do that because racism is infectious, like the COVID.
Oh yeah,
too, so.
That's been a long-standing pandemic.
So we got to fix that. Reparations. They're now going to do a study on that.
Oh yeah, and the amazing scientific efficaciousness of government studies.
They always produce innovation and more efficient distribution of the wealth.
Just pure wisdom.
Right.
Just amazing enlightenment at every paragraph, every line.
Well, we talk a lot about black budget, and on that note of use of funds, they could, there are people suffering who could, maybe receive some relief, and some taken care of, but instead
we are spend
developing
money this way.
World's most powerful laser to vaporize drones. The U.S. Army appears to be developing a laser weapon that's 1 million times stronger than anything ever used before. And it's kind of fascinating, right? The tactical ultra-short pulsed laser for Army platforms will be designed to fire pulse-like bursts for a brief 200 femtoseconds, or 1/4 of a second.
Oh,
sort of like the Star Wars blaster.
Again, they're using this CGI red beam to denote lasers.
Classic.
Lasers are at that level of power. They are not visible.
Right, but this is what they want you to project.
They want you to think you have the whole, Star Wars universe.
The sheer amount of intensity in a terawatt pulse laser is able to cause a non-linear effect in the air, resulting in a self-focusing filament, according to the Small Business Innovation Research. Non-linear effect in the air. That's
a self-focusing filament. That's sort of obscurantist language there a little bit. Are they saying that it does appear visible to the eye? Because I don't think that it would. Other terawatt lasers and all that sort of stuff it's not visible.
I would like to see a demonstration, please.
I know, right?
That's like Death Star.
Yeah.
Type stuff.
Right.
To take down drones.
Yeah, and drones? We're only talking about machines here?
Or are we going to put them on drones?
Right, or are we going to put them on drones?
Bzz.
Right.
Bzz. Wear your mask.
Bzz.
You don't have vaccine? Bzz.
Bzz. I mean, it's possible. I mean, that...
Or they'll just shoot high-powered vaccines at you.
Well, with this kind of energy, though, it's almost like an EMP, right? I mean, if you were to do it for more than 1/4 of a second, femtosecond,
Right.
If you were to do it for longer than that, it would disrupt all communications, and I don't know if it would be like the Death Star, like just explosion and fry everything. So it could just literally warp the air to such an extent that any biological entity around it.
Well, it's interesting because there were a lot of people during the California fires talking about directed energy weapons.
Absolutely.
And Mark Esper, remember the former Secretary of Defense, talking about killer satellites,
right?
From China and Russia, which of course is just like if
they
have it, either we gave it to them or we co-developed it with them.
Right.
We have it. Certainly,
we have it too. And it's not satellites going 17,000 miles an hour around the ball. It's just high altitude craft that can target things on the vivarium realm, the stationary plane upon which we live, because it's easier to do that than it is to be like the James Bond movie GoldenEye, where it's this like completely unaerodynamic thing in the upper atmosphere that's orbiting, that just like has perfect lockstep synchronicity and knows exactly where to fire as like the CGI like planet is moving underneath it. You know, it's so funny. But they do have a high altitude craft that can be weaponized with these kind of exotic weapons. That's certainly true.
Or low altitude.
Or lower
drones.
Yeah.
I mean, the consumer drones are so incredible now. $1,500, you could start putting some crude weaponry.
Sure.
You know, absolutely.
That's definitely true. Or, you know, how long before the smart dust could be rendered into an explosive?
How do we know that we're not already just, you know, completely saturated in smart dust?
And that it's actually experiencing our life for us.
Or
that's fine. I mean, you know, that's getting into sort of the simulation theory.
No, they're talking about in if you read into smart dust that they can create these like tiny camera lenses.
Yep.
Tiny.
So
think of like the 3D aware, you know, the Matrix essentially.
Right.
We talked about like Pokemon Go sort of crudely patching together images of the real world,
right,
and then mapping that to a virtual world that you could then go into and experience virtually and not real.
Right.
So then if with smart dust, you know, the potentialities for that to all be sort of connected into some system that creates I mean,
you know,
it gets into simulation theory when you really think about it, and
like apocalyptic dystopia,
right?
And because one of my favorite, actually probably my favorite Michael Crichton novel that he ever wrote was Prey, and it's one that most people have never heard of because it was not widely published, but it's basically an alarm that they do have AI microdust that can form into it.
When did he write that?
I think this was in the mid to late 90s. Check that out. Michael Crichton, Prey, Prey. He literally details, you know, beyond DARPA level micro AI robots.
Crazy.
And no one talks about it. People only mention Jurassic Park and, you know, Murder on the Orient Express. And, you know,
genetic engineering, and distributed artificial intelligence. Wow.
It's actually one of his best books I think he's ever written, because it's so arresting. The narrative, you cannot stop wanting to find out what happens.
I'm gonna have to get that and add that to the library.
It's a very,
and then maybe we'll come back and have a talk about it.
It's a fast read. I mean, I think it's like 400 pages or 350 pages or something, but I burned through it back in high school.
Oh man.
In like a weekend.
Sweet.
I mean, it was like, and that's the thing, like, where are the awesome sci-fi novels like that anymore? I have a huge collection of old sci-fi, so that's where I can get a lot of these funny little revelation of the method insights around the sci-fi reality that's dubbed as real.
I'm gonna have to check that out.
I've seen it. I've seen a lot of it come out in print already in the form of fiction, but we've already gone over this. A lot of fiction is just or a lot of what we call reality is an inversion narrative, and that a lot of the things that are dubbed as fiction are actually advertising real things that just aren't talked about.
Mm-hmm.
And Prey by Michael Crichton is a classic example of that. Where, I mean, he goes to sort of some Hollywood sci-fi extents for the sophistication of it. But ultimately, the warning is very apt because it was in 2002 that he wrote it. So that was almost 20 years ago. And now it's like Hitachi, has patents for it.
Yeah.
So it's just a matter of time before you can AI dronify and like use maglev type stuff to create like a Terminator that's made out of smart dust. Because that's basically what is in Prey. That's what happens.
I gotta check that out.
It was like it becomes like when you're like 230 pages into it, you're like, everyone in this novel is fucked. Like, there's no way that this can be beaten. And it is pretty inventive how he allows the protagonists to survive and actually eventually defeat this thing. But in the process,
that's a Hollywood Western,
well, see, that's the thing. They
world
never
conqueror narrative too.
I don't think they've ever made a Hollywood rendition of that, because it hits a little too close to home. It's like a little too DARPA, black budget.
Not enough dinosaurs.
Not enough dinosaurs. Not enough
dinosaurs
sci-fi.
are for kids,
yeah.
and that's what we want to.
We
don't want to tell the adults the wrong thing.
That's right.
Because then they might be able to overcome the smart dust.
Right.
Or not.
Or not.
Let's jump to one more topic before we wrap this up. This is more very contemporary. The outage at the Federal Reserve.
Oh gosh,
operational error
Whoopsie.
caused an outage. Are we seeing the opening tremors of the full-on collapse, which has been oft predicted but hasn't fully come to fruition yet? Or are we just seeing them experimenting, getting beta testing for the digital dollar? What do you think?
Yeah, I think that if you've seen that whole South Park meme, right? Of they're trying to get into investing, and they go to the office and the guy's like, okay, how much do you have to put in? And they're like, I think it was like $500 or something. And he's like, okay, thank you, let's put it in the account, and it's gone.
Yes. Yeah.
So this actually ties into that Anton Creel video about retail brokerages and trading educators and all that stuff that sits on the Telegram, and that is excellent education on this topic. But specifically, this delays wire transfers. I mean, yeah, the bank holiday under the Corona paradigm could be however long it takes them to just replace everyone's bank account with a digital currency
substitute.
Yeah,
yeah,
digital substitute. Where it's like, okay, ATMs don't really work anymore. We're not actually divvying out cash.
Well, it spreads the virus.
It spreads the virus.
And some fast food places and other establishments, if they're open,
don't
even accept cash.
Yeah.
Even if you have it. Imagine that. You won't take my money?
You won't take
my money?
The legal tender of the country that I live in? I mean, it's like...
That's unreal.
It's unreal. It's like, oh, well, you can... Well, see, what they're going to do is they're going to probably use some sort of ATM credit system where if you hand in cash, you actually maybe get a little bit more denominated to your account in
of course
this
it'll
digital.
Be inflated away.
It'll be inflated away
week,
in the next
COVID package.
Exactly. But they'll probably do some sort of incentive like that where, because they know people hoard cash, but they also know that they have a lot of these retail establishments under the digital technocracy thumb,
right?
Where they can be like, well, the registers don't even accept cash anymore. So if you have cash with you, that's fine. Just go to one of those machines over there and swap it out for a little bit. You get a little bit more. It's kind of like you get like a discount on your purchase. Credit. It'd be like it's exactly. It's like it would be some sort of percentage gained on the or percentage off the goods for getting digital credits transferred to a debit card that you could just swipe for whatever your purchase is. But it's like an extra step. But they might roll out one-way ATMs like that for cash, where they just turn off the dispense element of the ATM.
Right.
And it's only credits to your account. So if the Fed is outing wire transfers, then this is a way for them to monopolize even more control over everyone's finances with CBDC, central bank digital currency. So that you could argue is like a mark of the beast type thing, because it's the beast system, marking your worth essentially in the form of, whatever your bank account balance is. And, they already monitor all the digital transfers and everything. And that they want just more of that. They want less anonymity. They want less cash transfers. And they want panopticonic, level financial insight into everyone's behavior, everyone's standing in society. And then the social credit score rolls out. And then they can turn off your account for like a period of time. Like, oh, you posted this online. Your card doesn't work for 24 hours.
Mm-hmm. Connected everything.
Go and practice your Ignatian, deprivationism.
That's already being beta tested in China. That sort of model.
Yep.
Yeah, definitely.
And we've seen Black Mirror derevelation of the method on that. And the thing is, this term of, oh, you're, tinfoil hat or whatever, that increasingly all that means is you notice the obvious and you're not afraid to point it out.
Yeah, like the New York Times says, critical thinking, don't go down the rabbit hole. Just
that's right.
And
literally came out and said it.
I love that.
I love it.
I love that.
I love it. It just validates what we've been talking about all along.
Yeah, it makes me more entrenched in my own preconceived notions about their corruption and
their obvious chicanery and deception, and their gaslighting and their malicious, malevolent attempt at subverting basic common sense, community, intimacy, relationships, freedom. It's misery loves company. These people clearly feel enslaved to their baser nature, which is why they try to, share their misery in the form of all these ridiculous, abominationist policies and practices, so that, it just eventually breaks people's will. And they're like, aha, now you've joined us. Now you are, designed in your behavior to feed the egregore of fear and the incarnation of the beast system.
It's been interesting to see all these big companies, MicroStrategy, Tesla buying Bitcoin, and it kind of is that bullish for. Who is that bullish for?
It's a good question. I mean, zetetically, it makes sense for big hedge funds, big, portfolio management firms, to include crypto into their portfolios, because they exist to make money for their clients, right? And if they know that the current monetary system is failing, then it would make sense to just sort of transfer funds over to a different, sector, a different paradigm of transferring value. The flip side of that is they know that it's eroding trust in the current financial system.
Right.
And they can't, it's a little bit of an acrobatic feat that they're trying to pull off here, because on the one hand, they want more surveillanceification of finance. So they see the value of a digital currency. But they don't have necessarily the means to monitor every single blockchain out there in real time. They may have the capacity to report suspicious activities on the blockchain, but they can't necessarily prevent the transactions from going through on blockchain. And so in that way, it's not as censorable as they like it to be. Now with a CBDC, that doesn't have to be blockchain based. That could just be some, graph basically that they, arbitrarily node out, and Bank of America becomes a CBDC validator. HSBC comes to another validator. They can basically track those kind of transactions in real time and censor those kind of transactions, and so that's what their, I think, idea is they're trying to use the cryptocurrencyfication of the monetary system as a sort of dry run. They're trying to use it to their advantage, basically. They want it to be a dry run for people to get used to not circulating cash, not using any sort of physical means for transferring value. So in the event that they can finally create enough of a behavioral modification towards their CBDCs, they can start to essentially deny exchange pairs, for example. That would be one thing they could try to do, is to just hound the exchanges to have a CBDC pair for every single crypto, so that they could then start to monitor each individual blockchain more, because it's their controlled CBDC pair. So that's the danger, is the entrance of these CBDC kind of stablecoin ventures into the crypto, because they know they can't completely control it, but they do know that they can
still manipulate
the market in their favor towards their artificial stability.
Right.
And so
do you think that's a limited hangout while they still have the purchasing power of the dollars they print? I mean, at the end of the day, if the oligarchs still have all of the real wealth of society, our treasure, our technology, our patents, our commodities, our land, our ability to move on the earth. I mean,
right.
if they have all those cards, I mean, who cares about a digital representation of wealth at that point?
Right.
You're just literally
right
on their plantation.
Right.
Absolutely.
Digital plantation. Yeah, and they've already created it to a great extent, and we're already enmeshed in it.
And then
at least in the early phase,
we're just arguing about which one is better when they're all sort of enslaving in their own way. A monetary system to begin with,
right?
It certainly introduces a sort of a consensus agreement that can, be subjected to regulation and monitoring, versus each transaction being a purely voluntary transfer of value. It's a means of centralizing that, and that's a social thing that we agreed on, but it's obviously been captured. It's been captured by the robber barons and very old bloodlines. Maybe they actually introduced it for their own purposes.
Certainly possible. I mean,
as a control mechanism, the monetary system to begin with.
I mean, and the thing is, you're never going to have a perfect system. And it is true that, for example, there's about, 16 million legitimate millionaires out there who can go to the bank and have $1 million liquid accessible. Like, there's not that many people out there who can do that. So that's the difference between on-paper wealth and like liquid wealth. So I think what they're trying to do with the CBDC thing is to basically hijack those kind of people's wealth and make them have full allegiance to the controlled new paradigm before they get the realization that, oh, maybe I need to transfer all of this out into a decentralized system. And that's not that many people for you to basically hold hostage.
Right. And, with all the game stonk stuff,
sure,
and this growing awareness of how rigged everything is, I think it's time for a good old-fashioned bank run, because the way the blockchain thing could get away from them is, it's a technical problem for them.
Sure.
They're already overextended in many ways. And they still at this point have to have human servants to make things happen.
Right.
And yeah, the proliferation of blockchains totally scrambles their ability to implement things like know your customer laws.
Right.
And to monitor and be a central clearinghouse for transactions.
Right.
They're not in that position, that privileged position anymore. People are doing it through software. And that's the fascinating thing about the cryptos is there's always a potential for them to manipulate markets while they still have power. But it does seem to be, like I said, scrambling. Just look at their ability to tax. And, that's when you're over the target when you're getting the flack and they're like, oh, well, this stuff's being used for illicit activities. It's like, are you kidding me? Like you can say
God. Fiat money.
You can say the same thing about you going back centuries. I mean, give me a break.
A billion times more illicit activity has been done with fiat money, without question. That's like a no-brainer.
Yeah.
And then the other argument is, oh, it takes up so much energy, and it's like, okay, well, all the branch banking systems
what
and
happened
ATM.
To petrodollar?
Right.
Petrodollar. That doesn't use energy.
Right. Yeah, like exactly. all the banking houses that require to be manned.
What about the energy to mine gold?
Right.
That consumes energy.
It consumes energy too.
But I thought that was a worthless token.
Oh yeah.
It doesn't have any intrinsic value.
Oh yeah.
That's what the central bankers used to say before they had to address the Bitcoin issue.
Right. Well, in the Bitcoin, it is the sort of flagship, first, pioneer,
first to market,
first to market kind of pioneer in the space. But it's possible that one could be their main target to try to control. And I think that it's logical for them to take over the leader, and basically say, yeah, you guys thought this project was decentralized, and it was for most of its life, but now it's not.
But they can't go all in and buy up all the Bitcoin.
Right.
Otherwise, the price will go immediately to
$1 million.
Yeah.
Dollars per Bitcoin.
So they're in a very precarious situation.
They're in a tricky spot because on the one hand, they have to buy up as much as they can so they can try to control it. But they can't
do it sort of overtly either because then they tip their hat.
Right.
Yeah.
And then they tip. Yeah, exactly.
A big admission we talked about with Bix was under Trump, it happened in 2017. Chris Giancarlo said that with Steve Mnuchin, they popped the Bitcoin bubble when it was hovering around, $20,000.
Right.
And well, how did they do that? They just procured a bunch of Bitcoin and then they, dumped it on the market to create a psychological effect that cascaded for months and months and months.
Yeah.
But it didn't go to zero, so.
And now they're in a spot where, I mean, if you look at all of the, I think what they really want to do to crypto is absorb it into the derivatives bubble.
It's kind of going that direction.
It's going that direction to an extent.
Yeah.
And then they want to pop the derivatives bubble. That's the ultimate shutdown effect that they want, so they can create the environment for chaos and the need for a full reset. And he trade in your cash at the new ATMs, and here's your CBDC, and we have an emission rate of 25% digital currencies that are released every single year. So food prices are gonna.
It also has the added benefit of storing what vaccines you have.
That's right.
So that you can use it at the store or not. That's what we're up against, folks.
That's what that is the beast system in a nutshell is the capitulation of humanity to a techno dystopia that has not any resemblance of a sustainable future for human
it's very anti-human,
welfare.
antisocial.
It is.
Yep. Well, on that note, I'm going to wrap up the show. Thank you guys for joining. Check us out at Zetetic.news. You can also follow, subscribe, and comment on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, and you can find us restreaming 23.97 on the Theta Edgecast. If you're not familiar with that, you can earn cryptocurrency by growing the decentralized streaming network, and you can also catch our latest episode restreaming on the Discover page as well. I will provide instructions on how to do that within the post and the description wherever you may be seeing or listening to this. If you're just a listener, do head over to Zetetic.news. Check out the video component of our Zetetic Newscasts. It's increasingly engaging. This is our first live stream, so hopefully you'll also join us next time for live chat, and it can be more interactive. One more thing, I have provided an update to the website. You can become a ZNN contributor by downloading an Edge node and start to relay our stream. The more people who are doing that, the higher the fidelity, easier the buffering will be for other viewers. And in the background, you can be earning T-Fuel, which has appreciated more than 500% since we started paying our guests and participants for their participation in the Zetetic Newscast. So can't say we'll be paying out $1,000 to any old person who comes in the chat, right? But for our special guests and our participants, they've been, I think, rewarded handsomely, and will be continued to be rewarded, because you can now stake your T-Fuel in the Edge node, and you get a return on your T-Fuel for basically keeping that Edge node running. So support us for free by downloading that. Again, instructions on the website. This was an awesome episode, Xavier. Thanks for joining, and
absolutely,
of
every
course,
time
adding your commentary. Y'all have a good night.
Peace.